Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on YouTube and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Ezra Ginsburg and with Dave Minuk, I'm your host, Drew Mindell, talking about the Winnipeg Jets on what is a bright and sunny, albeit not that warm, Saturday, the 8th of May. Gentlemen, good to see you both on this Saturday morning. We certainly won't be seeing much of each other in person with lockdown number 3 beginning later on tonight, but that's a topic for a different show in a different place and a different time. So instead, we'll just talk about the Winnipeg Jets this morning. Nice to see you guys.
Yeah, nice to see you guys too. Yeah, unfortunately, what's going on in our province, but hopefully everybody is staying safe and we'll get through this together, but enough COVID talk, because it's obviously, something we talk about way too much, unfortunately. But guys, just you can the air just feels fresher in this city right now after that losing streak ended, right? Like you can almost feel like, that weight was on fans as well, right? And it was just something that I think everybody, the Jets, the players, the coaches, fans, everybody was just sick of talking about. So it's nice that the Jets are able to come back, have the last 4 games at home. Hopefully they can win all 4 of those games, and it's just something that you knew was going to end eventually. You knew that the Jets weren't going to lose their last 12 games of the year, although at one point, guys, it looked like that might be the case.
Yeah, I don't know how sure of that I was.
Yeah, and I think, Drew, the most interesting thing about these last 4 games is going to see which players are rested, which defensemen get the majority of the games, right? Like, are we going to see one of the veteran defensemen on the Jets or 2 of the veteran defensemen on the Jets sit out? And, are we going to see Christian Vesalainen maybe come back into the lineup? That's kind of what we're interested in seeing here, because we know the Jets have already clinched a playoff spot. It's just a question of if the Jets are going to finish 2nd or 3rd in the North. And obviously you would prefer to finish 2nd, but regardless, you're going to face the same team.
Exactly right. Dave Minuk, your thoughts to start on this Saturday morning. Nice to see you. It's a busy day. We got the Jets game tonight at 6. The Moose play, I believe, at 2 o'clock Central Time. They're in Toronto to face the Marlies again. So it is certainly going to be a busy day for all of us and for you over there on that website. And what's that website called again?
It's a little website called illegalcurve.com.
There you go. That's we appreciate that kind of plug right there. So what are you looking for in tonight's contest against the Senators and against the next 4 relatively meaningless games after that, or including tonight?
Well, I just wanted, since Ezzy got a little preamble, I'm going to just interject quickly and say support local as best you can, folks. We appreciate all the support we get from everybody on our channel. And I think it's important, especially with all the things that are coming in our province, that we try and support restaurants as best we could. I'm not going to be preachy and tell you what to do, but if you can, and if you can afford it, then I think it'd be great to help support local restaurants, local chains. And even sometimes you got to remember a chain is still owned by someone who's local. So just remember that and try and support those guys as best you can. Anyways, back to hockey. I think that the Jets are, it's interesting, right? Because Maurice talked, Neil Pionk didn't skate yesterday. Maurice said he was 98%. And he said Pionk wanted to get on the ice, but he didn't want him to. Just a further update, Nikolai Ehlers will probably, he said he could be skating today. He could be skating in a non-contact uniform, and he won't be shooting, obviously, due to his upper body injury, which we don't really know what that is, but we suspect it's probably something to do with the shoulder if he's not taking any shots, and based on the way he went into the dressing room. So you've got Nikolai Ehlers, who may be on the ice, but obviously isn't going to be practicing in any significant capacity. And you've got Neil Pionk, who's questionable, I would say, based on the fact that he called it a maintenance day, but then also acknowledged that he's 98%. So, you had Jordy Ben on his right side, which probably would be interesting for Jets fans to be able to see Jordy Ben actually play on his right side, because even though it's his off wing, that's probably his better position based on what the numbers would suggest. And again, I think the other thing that people are looking forward to seeing is Ville Heinola getting another start. He's an interesting young man. I thought his comments yesterday were there was a lot of confidence there, which and again, confidence but not arrogance. And I thought you can see he's a young man who has feels that his ability is not really something that needs to be questioned, I guess. So I think that, that's one other player you're really kind of watching to see if he can keep rolling what he was able to do. Obviously, like we talked about in the last game, he didn't play a ton of minutes, but again, if Neil Pionk doesn't play, here's an idea. Maybe give a guy who's very good on the power play, a power play opportunity. I mean, if you don't have a guy like Neil Pionk who can move and get that shot through, Billy Heinola, he's had some power play time with the Manitoba Moose. He's a pretty good player. He's, fast, smooth. There's an opportunity for him to kind of get him a little bit more confidence potentially on their power play. So that's one of the things I'm watching. And again, it's also about the consistency. Can the Jets remember, Calgary is not a very good team. We got to qualify that. They should have been a desperate team, but they weren't a very good team. Mm-hmm. And Ottawa's a good team. Like Ottawa's 7-2-1 in their last 10 games. Ottawa's been playing good. They've won their last 2 hockey games. They're good. They've been playing. They pumped Montreal, 5-1?
They are so I went back, doing some research, me, a professional journalist that I am. Ahead of the show, I went back and looked at Ottawa's record over the last month. They are tied for 11th in the NHL with a record of 8-4-1 over the last month. So that's not a pushover hockey team. Now they have nothing to play for tonight, but they really haven't had anything to play for since the start of the regular season, or since the first 10, 12 games of the regular season when they got off to that terrible start. So Ottawa is a very good hockey team, and the Jets are feeling better about themselves because they got the win against Calgary on Wednesday night. But that being said, you don't want to get a win and then immediately go back to your losing ways. You want to get a win and then start putting some wins together so that you're feeling good about yourself heading into the playoffs, so that you're not trying to flick a switch and get ready for the start of the playoff series, likely against Edmonton. So today against Ottawa, I'm not going to say it's a big game because that would be overstating things, but it's an important game for the Jets to ensure still that their details are correct, that they're playing like a 5-man unit as they did against Calgary, and just sort of, continue to get good vibes after what had certainly been the lowest point of the season there, Ezzy.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to follow up your first win in 8 games with a disappointing loss, right? And I agree with you, Drew. And I love the fact that Mike Rolling is listening to us on the treadmill just because his name's Rolling, right? So hopefully he's doing some nice rolling on that treadmill. I certainly have not been on a treadmill in about 5 years, Mike. So you're doing a lot of exercise that I should be doing.
I gotta say though, Ezzy, I mean, with the beard trimmed to a much more reduced level, I made 2 comments or 2 observations. 1, you look about 15 years younger. And 2, you look about 110 pounds lighter, because that beard made you look like. So
it had some weight to it for sure.
It had some heft
but
to
I appreciate
it.
the
Now
compliment.
you look like. You know what you look like, and this is a bit of a left-handed analogy, but my parents' dog, after she goes to the groomer, she, when she's before the groomer, she's this big sort of fat wobbly thing. Then she gets groomed and you realize she's this tiny little thing that's got actually no body mass to her. That apparently is you. So what I'm saying is you're my parents' dog.
Yeah, and I'll take that big fat wobbly animal comment as a compliment. But
yes, that was a compliment. As I said, left-handed.
I'm just happy I got a haircut, and that's another unfortunate thing about the new public health orders is that hair salons are going to be shut down. But regardless, here, boys, and that a boy Blake for testing out the icy sandwich, and apparently he put an egg on it. So I like his.
If you put an egg,
if you put an egg on it, it would be a perfect hangover medicine. Is I think what Blake is saying there.
Yeah, I like it. That's interesting.
Not that we would know anything about hangovers or anything like that.
No.
We've touched alcohol.
Yeah, we've been dry for 10 years. So yeah, like going back to what you were saying before about the Jets in these last 4 games here. Dave makes an interesting point about Neil Pionk, right? Because you would expect Josh Morrissey and Neil Pionk to be paired up together, right? If Pionk is ready to go, Dave. But you mentioned Ville Heinola and maybe getting some of those power play minutes. I would be interested to see if you see Morrissey and Heinola as a pair, because Paul Maurice said this yesterday, that he's going to try a bunch of different combinations. I think he was referring to the forward lines as well, but probably more so the D pairings, right? Because you had Forbort and Poolman together, and you might have Stanley come in, guys. We don't know for sure, but there always is the option Stanley comes in and Heinola stays in, which would, mean that, it's either going to be Dave Pionk or Forbort, right? Maybe Pullman, maybe Morrissey. But the money would be on Pionk, right? If Stanley comes in and Heinola stays in. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there. And I think, looking at this, from a macro level, guys, I mean, the Jets could easily win all these games. Yeah, you're going to be facing a Toronto team that's obviously a very good team, but there's a good chance that Toronto team is going to be resting a lot of players in that last game.
You're going to be facing the Marlies, Ez.
Yeah,
exactly.
Let me stop you right there, Ezzy. I think I heard this correctly in Paul Maurice's media availability yesterday, that he said, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but did he not say that he's not planning on resting guys just for the sake of resting them?
I think that was, it sounded like
I might be paraphrasing a little bit, but I'm pretty close to that. That was, I think, pretty close to the quote that I heard. And I just don't understand that for the life of me.
But I mean, again, I look, let's be realistic. You always take a Paul Maurice press conference with a grain of salt, because I mean, what he's telling you is not what their actual plan could be. So, I mean, yeah, he may have said something along those lines, but I mean, he could change. I mean, first of all, it's not a courtroom. He can change his mind tomorrow, and it's not like anybody's gonna be like, well, you said this 2 days ago. I mean, he doesn't have to be held to his words, right? Because again, he's entitled to make decisions to change his mind. Worth noting, as just from the way the pairs were in practice, he had DeMello up with Morrissey, and he had Ben on his right side with Heinola, and Forbort was still with Pullman. So, it'll be interesting. And it's interesting in the sense that if you thought Pionk was going to play, wouldn't you have kept DeMello with Heinola and put Ben up in that temporary spot? So that
DeMello was really good with Heinola, right? Like we talked about that, right?
Sure.
Like Heinola, is coming in, not having played a game in a while. And, Drew's mentioned this many times before, right? Like Dylan DeMello has been the security blanket on that Jets defense in terms of, playing on the third pair with whether it's Logan Stanley or Jordy Ben, or before that, Nathan Beaulieu. So I like those pairs as well, Dave, because, in theory, that would be your kind of third pair, right? Like Ville Heinola, Jordy Ben. I don't know if you call that your second pair or your third pair, right? Because we know Heinola has the talent to be a top four defenseman, but that would probably be your third pair if your second pair is going to be, let's say, Forbort Pionk, right? And then you're going to have, I guess, that would leave Josh Morrissey and Dylan DeMello, right? And then you'd have to figure, Tucker Pullman is also an option to play with Heinola as well. But, that's going to be something really interesting to watch, because I think when you consider Heinola's puck moving ability and just his overall talent and what he's able to do for that defense. And another thing, guys, we have to talk about is, like, even though the Jets, won the game, they got a little bit of a, goal explosion here. There's other guys on this team that are still struggling offensively, right? Like we know Pierre-Luc Dubois hasn't scored a goal in, I don't know, a month. It's been 12 or 13 games here. Other guys are struggling to put the puck in the net. So, I mean, you want to see some offense out of these guys as well, right? Like you have 4 games, they're meaningless games in terms of you've already clinched a playoff spot. But I think that's something to watch as well, right? Like not only would you like to win all 4 of these games, or at least 3 of these games, you'd like to see these guys, finishing and picking up some goals, especially like we talked about some of the guys in the top 6, right? Like Paul Stastny, Andrew Kopp, Mason Appleton.
Well, you need
now
Kyle Connor.
Yeah, exactly. Kyle Connor has 1 goal in his last 6 games, right? Or 1 goal in his last 5 games. So Connor's a guy that you got to get going. Mark Scheifele, like Blake Wheeler, obviously got his 2 goals. And, that's something that is going to be huge here. And you're going to get every opportunity. Like, yes, Ottawa is a really good team. I agree with you, Drew. And they've been a great story. And I think one of the reasons why they've been so successful is that they haven't had any pressure, right? Like they've known for a while they weren't making the playoffs. So they're playing for themselves and they're playing that spoiler role. But when you're talking about those games against Vancouver, I mean, that should be point night for the Jets.
Well, Drew, I just want to interject quickly because to answer, you asked the question about sitting guys, but Paul Maurice, just to add a little context, he did talk about not overplaying guys. So you won't see guys playing 25, 30 minutes. It really kind of, the impression I got was that he's going to try and roll his lines as efficiently and as effectively as he can.
Fair enough.
Just one little qualifier.
But I would still be surprised if some of the guys who've played 56 games or, who've played 53 games or every game this year so far, don't sit
Well,
at least one night or 2 nights between now and next Friday when the regular season ends.
Well, and the only other thing I would add in, the only concern, and we talked about it on the last post-game show, I think, when we were talking about the idea of how would you would work the Jets goaltending rotation, you know, for the next 4 games. The one thing Paul Maurice has to factor in, because of those meaningless Vancouver and Calgary who are playing the 3 games, or Vancouver and Calgary, right?
You're talking about when are the playoffs for the North Division going to begin?
Right. So because of that uncertainty, you know, you don't want to play a team. You don't want Blake Wheeler to play on Tuesday, sit out the game on Friday, and then not play again till the following Friday, the following Saturday, whenever the North Division would start. So
they're thinking of starting. I mean, sorry, Dave. I mean, if you look at the time frame, so the Jets season ends on the 14th, which is next Friday. Right now, Vancouver and Calgary are scheduled to play 3 games. Sunday the 16th, Monday the 17th, and I believe Wednesday the 19th. So they allegedly are targeting the North Division playoffs to begin right around that 19th of November. So
that would be 8 days. If you don't play the Friday,
November.
Sorry, did I say November? May. Sorry, so back in time here.
So the point is that if you don't play that game on Friday against the Leafs, then you end up sitting at least 8 days. Now, look. Getting some rest is going to be a good thing probably for this Jets team. You know, get some practice time in. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but I'm just saying that factors in when you're talking about resting guys, that there will be rest at the end of, and I wonder if Paul Maurice in his head is saying, keep guys in game shape for the remainder of the season. Maybe we see something on the back-to-back. That would be the night I would expect you'd see him, yes. But I really don't know on that Friday against the Leafs. Look, you're not going to want guys killing themselves, but you're going to want guys in the game because, again, you have to be a little concerned about a long layoff, because we know what after a long layoff tends to do. You know, you get a little bit of creep in their game, and it's not necessarily good that first game of the playoffs if you've had that long a gap. That's all.
But that long layoff, to your point, is going to be the same for every North Division team. I mean, the Jets and the Leafs finish on Friday. I believe the Habs finish this coming Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm just talking about the playoff teams, really. Yeah. And the Oilers finish on Saturday. So there's going to be a layoff for basically all the North Division teams. Sounds like the Habs are going to have the longest one. They might even get a full week between the end of their regular season and the start of their playoff series, be it against the Oilers or be it against the Leafs.
That might not be bad for the Habs with all of their injuries, to be honest with you.
Certainly wouldn't. I mean, if you're the Leafs, and if you're the Leafs, you haven't played, it's going to be a long time since you've played any sort of meaningful hockey game. And you wonder, going to your point there, Ezzy, if the Habs are healthy for that first game, assuming it's Toronto-Montreal, does that maybe factor in? But we're getting way ahead of ourselves when we're looking at playoff previews and things of that nature. Right now, it's the Winnipeg Jets that we're focused on. And I say good morning to everybody who's just joined us or joined us after I made my initial introduction. Nice to see so many people. Welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Saturday morning, we're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms. This segment of the show brought to you by Dr. Les Rikus and the team at Linden Market Dental Center, official dentist of Illegal Curve Hockey. Don't be an Ezzy. Always wear a mouth guard and give yourself peace of mind protection, as well as facial, teeth, and mouth protection. To make an appointment to get your teeth tuting, visit lindenmarketdentalcenter.com.
Yeah, Drew, and I also wanted to, just quickly say Mark Sports Video was asking about, well, he wasn't asking, he was saying it's hard to sit a guy who has a bonus in his contract. And obviously, I certainly have not looked at, bonuses and everything like that. I'm not sure if you guys have, and it's a good point. And, we're just talking here. I mean, we don't know exactly which players are going to get to rest, but yeah, you'd have to think that, that will be factored in. If a guy, can hit a bonus, yeah, they're probably not going to sit him.
But the bonuses shouldn't be a factor because it's really only guys on their entry level deal or over 35 vets who can sign bonuses. And I don't think the Jets have any bonuses.
Logan Stanley has a plus minus bonus, I think. I want to say if he finishes in the top 3 for plus minus, which he actually is right now. I think he's he's entitled to $125,000 bonus.
So he's going to get that bonus probably, whether he plays or not, simply because, I mean, honestly, if you're Logan Stanley and you're not worried about your bonus, but if you were, you'd say, I'm okay, just sit me. I'll take my bonus.
Kudos to his agent though, boys, for putting that in his contract, right? Because that's a very specific target to have to reach, right?
Well,
and
we've been putting
earned
that in
money.
your contract for years, and you haven't
just never hit
one.
the bonus. You just never hit the bonus, Ezzy.
You're still in the minus. You're constantly.
It was
in the
like,
minus
if I hit 500 illegal curve sandwiches in 3 months, I will get my bonus, and I only got up to like 350.
Your bonus in that case is an angioplasty, but that's a separate issue altogether. Look, the Jets are.
Sorry, I misspoke. If he stays in the top 3 of plus minus, it's a $212,500 bonus at the end of the season. It's a pretty good bonus.
That's decent money right there.
Nice little chunk of change there.
Yeah. Do you have to play a minimum number of games? Forget it. I'm not even going to. That might be going too far into the weeds there. I'm not sure that if you have that.
Yeah, can you actually just pull up the PDF of his contract?
No, he played his 29th game, and I think as long as he had played in 29 games, which was a while ago, then like this is a.
Are you his agent?
Well, I mean, hey guys, you want me to do research for the show or not?
We do want you to do
and that was,
research.
for the record, that
Research.
was back in April. So he's definitely hit the target date. Like, he obviously had to play a minimum number of games. So,
well, there you go. Dave Minuk bringing some signing bonus information, which is I did not expect you to pull that one out early on this Saturday morning.
I mean, let's always give Cap Friendly its due. I mean, Cap Friendly is the place to go to find out any information you need. So I'm not going to pretend like I'm privy to Logan Stanley's contract, guys. Clearly, you can just go to Cap Friendly and find out any information.
I was willing to give you all the credit in the world, and you wouldn't take it. You're an honorable gentleman.
And Drew, the key is that Dave actually went to Cap Friendly and did that research, which we didn't do. So it's really just comes down to us being lazy.
Yeah, but look. You have 2 kids. I have 2 kids. Dave's got more time than we do. Let's blame it on our children, because that's what most good parents do, isn't it? Let's talk about Jets head coach Paul Maurice, because like we said, they won on Wednesday, so you could feel the pressure. Be relieved a little bit. But there was still a lot of talk last week about his future here in Winnipeg and the potential to see, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be a coaching change, but, if the Jets don't get the results necessary during this playoff run, will that facilitate a coaching change from Paul Maurice? And that leads us to the illegal curve question of the day, which is now available on the ticker on the screen as well as on our Twitter feed. If the Winnipeg Jets lose in the first round of the playoffs, what changes to the coaching staff and or front office do you think will take place? We'll start with that. So basically, the question is, what do the Jets need to accomplish come playoff time for Paul Maurice to maintain job security? Or do you think that he's got job security no matter what the result come playoff time is?
It's an interesting question because, it's hard to necessarily tie his future to what happens in the playoffs. But I think, there's absolutely some pressure here when you consider that, before the season started, we knew that the Jets were going to be competing with the Edmontons, the Calgarys, the Montreals, for playoff spots here. We knew that Toronto was most likely going to be one of the top teams. They were the only real team guys that you knew you could basically pencil in as a playoff team. And I think, considering the Jets were right up there with Toronto for several weeks, battling for first place, I think, the expectations for this team have changed since January. So I think in that sense, I think the expectations have to be at the very least winning one round, if not a couple of rounds and getting to the West final, because aside from 2018, the Jets have not won a playoff round, right? So at a certain point, you have to say, could we have different results with a different coach? So, I'm not going to say, if the Jets get knocked out in the first round that Paul Maurice is going to be fired, but I also wouldn't be surprised either, because I think this Jets team is absolutely capable of winning a playoff round. Is Edmonton a good team, and have they struggled against Edmonton this year? Yeah, we know that they've struggled, and Connor McDavid has put up 500 points against the Jets in 9 games. So it's not going to be easy, but I think you have to answer that question, Drew, and say how much pressure is on Paul Maurice to get this team out of the first round. And I think I've already answered that. I mean, there is pressure, and if he isn't able to do that, again, I'm not going to say that he's going to absolutely be fired if the Jets don't go to the Western Conference Final. But again, I mean, this is a results-based business, guys, right? Like, that's what you are paid to do. You're paid to win hockey games. You're paid to win playoff rounds. So I think, the Jets management, ownership, their expectation is absolutely that they want to go on a long playoff run. They're not going to be happy just to get there, guys. Like this isn't, the Jets are not at the point in their, I guess, trajectory, if you want to call them that, their window. They're not at that point in the window where they're just happy to make the playoffs. They want to go on a long playoff run because they haven't gone far since 2018. That was 3 years ago, boys. Like, that you can't keep going back to that and saying that, while we, had that playoff run, eventually we're going to get back there. I mean, now is the time to do that. So I think there absolutely is always the chance, that Maurice's job can jeopardy. I believe he has 2 years left on his contract. So, I mean, he has that security, but it's definitely not something that we were talking about a year ago. But I think now with this shortened season and the facts are, look at, if you get into the playoffs, you have just as good a chance as anybody. Columbus proved that to us. And many teams before Columbus have proven that all you have to do is get in. And then, obviously the Blue Jackets didn't win the Stanley Cup, but the point is, you can upset a team in the first round. So there's no reason why the Jets can't at least go to the second round and further.
Dave?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the fact is that Paul Maurice has an extension that gave him, 2 more years after this season guaranteed. And I think that will probably play in, but I don't know, based on the lack of, we looked at the Jets defense and, someone said Kevin Cheveldayoff has as big a role to play in this as Paul Maurice does, because these two are tied, right? I mean, again, the defense has been a problem since Dustin Byfuglien hung up his skates. And of course, that drama played out, unfortunately, as long as it did throughout the course of the season, a while back. And it's funny, I was thinking about whenever I sometimes will go on Illegal Curve and I'll look at the .com and I'll look at some of the, I'll come across an old post and I just think to myself,
Curve porn site. That's good. Good for the
no, that's Curves, Drew. But the point is that even though that's what Weber likes to call us, the Curves. But the point is that and it was funny because I'd see the Byfuglien stuff coming up and whatnot. But look, the reality is this defense has been, in shambles when you really lost Trouba, Byfuglien, Meyer, Sherratt. I mean, those are 4 big pieces and they weren't replaced. And again, do I think that the prospects are there? Yeah, but the problem with the Jets is you have a really good forward group and young prospects who are still developing. And you don't want to rush these guys to help these guys. So the problem is that this has been an issue, right? And Kevin Cheveldayoff, we don't know we know the asking price for Matthias Ekholm was high. And then of course the window closed because Nashville was going on their run.
Yeah. Nashville's a win away from being a playoff team.
I know. Of course. So I'm saying, it makes sense why they, I guess it did in a sense make sense because, to Ezzy's point, do you think you can get in and really make some noise? I don't know if I'm Nashville. I'm thinking that way, but perhaps they are. So, what is it? Who is it going to fall on? I mean, you've hired Dave Lowry now. You've brought him in to be a voice. Are the voices getting stagnant? At what point Paul Maurice is one of the longest tenured coaches in the NHL. And again, he's been a good coach in terms of, achieving success with his team, but is he maximizing that level of success, right? Paul Maurice seems to be the guy who gets his team close to the dance, but not necessarily, finishes off the dance. You're not getting that slow song, So to me, that's the key for Paul Maurice is to show that you can do something with your team. And again, I think it comes down to adjustment. I think it comes down to showing that you're a nimble thinker, and you're able to adjust on the fly. And, he said something yesterday that he gets a little bit maligned for, and we'll see if it bears out. He said when he was the coach of Carolina in the Eastern and they went to the Eastern Conference Finals, I think he said he used 10 rookies in his lineup that year. And he talked about the kids being able to play. So, again, if he throws Ville Heinola in, if he throws Logan Stanley in, I'm just saying that might show more of a willingness, more an ability to change on the fly. I'm not saying it's going to get you through to the next round. Look, I think Connor Hellebuyck, guys, and I talked about this in the last show, I think Connor Hellebuyck is good enough to get the Jets a series win on his own. I think if he's locked in, and we've seen it since he won his Vezina last year, Connor Hellebuyck is what kind of is the strength of this Jets team. It allows the offense to fly, and it just allows the team to feel secure and, rest on their laurels a little bit defensively. They've had to come back and be a little bit more realistic based on the fact that he hasn't been at, a superhuman level some games now. But again, I don't know that you're necessarily, I mean, it's so unpredictable. And this year, and the reason why I think Paul Maurice has latitude is because this year is, I don't know. Jeremy, I don't know if he can dance or not dance. I'm not sure entirely. I know I can't dance. So that's not a factor. But I think what it comes down to is that I think there's a little bit of latitude based on the COVID situation, what's happened, this North Division. And so I think that necessarily will mitigate some of the love.
Well, let's bring in a person who wrote about this exact topic earlier this week in the Winnipeg Free Press. Our friend Mike McIntyre joins us from the arena. Game day skate about to get underway, if it's not already underway, ahead of the Jets and the Senators later on this evening. Mike, good morning. Nice to see you. How are things down at the rink?
Things are pretty good, guys. Looks like a very optional morning skate happening here. Only about, a dozen players on the ice. So I guess they practiced yesterday, clinched a playoff spot the night before. So rest management appears to be in full effect.
There you go. Mike, you wrote about this in the Winnipeg Free Press this week in one of your columns, and it's our illegal curve question of the day. Basically, to sort of sum it up, what do the Jets need to do come playoff time? If the Jets go out meekly in the first round of the playoffs,
right,
do you expect there to be changes to the coaching staff or the front office as a result of what I'll describe as another disappointing first round exit?
Well, I think there should be. Whether or not that actually happens is another story entirely. I'm not sure the organization in a year, especially where there's no revenues coming in, wants to be on the hook for paying individuals to not work for them. That being said, certainly the 7-game losing streak was very alarming, as was the play in some of those games for sure. The Jets showed some really good signs, but I think there was some troubling things as well. So they get the win in Calgary and a good win in Calgary the other night against a Flames team that should have been fighting for their season, and they didn't put up much of a fight. You know what? I think there's an opportunity now here, obviously, for the Jets to try and finish the regular season strong, and whether they could carry that over into the playoffs. We know they're going to play one of Toronto or Edmonton, teams that they have not fared very well against. So, the task is a big one. I think they have to at least put up a strong fight. If they just meekly go out in 4 or 5 games, I think there's going to be a lot of calls for some change here. You're going to be bringing back a good chunk of the core again next year. You're probably spending to near or at the salary cap again next year. So the window, hypothetically, that window should still remain open. But you wonder, this is Paul Maurice's 8th year. Only John Cooper has been at the helm longer, and he just won a cup last year. At some point, look, it's not that one becomes a bad coach overnight, but the message eventually does get stale, right? And I think it's fair to ask, given how things have played out over the last few weeks, and are we getting to near that point? And I think how these next few weeks play out will go a long way to answering that.
Yeah, I think you make some really good points there, Mike. And we were talking about this earlier, right? Like you said, rest management, and we know Ville Heinola is going to play his second straight game tonight, and we expect that the forward lines will probably remain the same. There might be maybe one change, but how do you think Paul Maurice is going to handle this? Because we talked about that idea of maybe resting some players in the back-to-back against Vancouver, because
right,
if you rest the players in that last game against Toronto, there might be too many days between the last game of the regular season and the first game of the playoffs. So how do you see this playing out here with 4 games left in the season?
Well, I mean, I think priority number one now is just to stay healthy, right? The last thing the Jets want is to have somebody go down in these last 4 that, don't mean a whole lot, at least in the standings. Like whether you finish 3rd or 4th, you're not getting a banner. You're not hanging a banner at Bell MTS Place for finishing 3rd or finishing 4th. And I guess, like I said, pick your poison. Would you prefer to play Toronto or would you prefer to play Edmonton in the first round? Looks like the Leafs are probably going to hang on to that number 1 spot. So, stay healthy for sure and try and just get some good habits going again. The Jets, I think we heard it from a lot of players, right? Paul Stastny, Andrew Kopp talked about, cheating the game and and some of the bad traits that developed. I think even though they lost a few of them, you can look back now to the last 3 or 4 games and say that there was some signs of the Jets coming out of some of those bad habits. Certainly some better defensive awareness, which seemed to abandon them the last time Edmonton was here. So, you want to obviously continue that, but at the same time, I think you want to, how can we maximize the lineup for game 1? All eyes have to be on what is our lineup for game 1 against Edmonton or Toronto, who's playing with who, and let's make sure we keep those guys healthy, but also, keep them sharp. So it's a delicate balancing act, made all the more complicated, guys, by the fact we don't even know when the playoffs are starting yet, right? It's a fair question to ask. Are they going to start the North playoffs while Calgary and Vancouver are playing their meaningless end of season schedule, or are they going to make everybody wait until that happens? And I guess a little quirk here is that, let's say Montreal just keeps losing. It's not out of the realm of possibility that mathematically Vancouver and or Calgary could still be in the hunt going into those last 4 games, which I would suspect would hold everything up, right? So sure. It's not a great situation where if you're the Jets, you're playing today, you're playing Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, and then there's a great big question mark on your calendar after that.
You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live Saturday morning. Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press is our guest. He's live at the arena for the game day skate. The Jets and the Senators later on tonight.
Now, Mike, you're not wearing a hat because you're at Bell MTS Place, but I'm going to ask you to put your prognostication hat on and tell me, is Ville Heinola in the Jets lineup for game 1 of their playoff series?
Oh, boy. So should he be? Should he be?
I'll ask both. I'll ask both.
Yeah, he should be. I won't hold my breath, though, on it happening. And I'll say this. If he's not in because Logan Stanley's in, I don't have so much of a problem with that. If he's not in because Jordie Benn is in, I think then there's more of an issue. Me personally, and when we talk about what we'd like to see in these last 4 games, I'd like to see Logan Stanley and Ville Heinola in a couple games at the same time, not necessarily playing together, but just part of your 6. What does that look like? And maybe we get that, right? I mean, depending on what happens with Neil Pionk, I guess, although it looks like it would be Jordie Benn that would go in if Pionk isn't in tonight. So, I think that's something worth taking a look at. But guys, look, we know Paul Maurice, right? And the idea of him putting, Heinola, who's a sophomore in his second year, and Logan Stanley, who's a rookie, the idea of him trusting that, even though we can all say that we think it's the right thing, I just don't know that Paul Maurice does that. So I'd lean heavily towards the no if everybody's healthy. But that being said, and look, they didn't win the last game because of Ville Heinola, but the numbers are the numbers, right? The Jets have actually played, they bookended that 7-game losing streak with the 2 games that Ville Heinola was in the lineup. And I'll say this, the thing that I liked almost as much as Ville's game is what it does potentially to the other pairs. And if that means that Paul Maurice trusts putting Neil Pionk and Josh Morrissey together, I like that a heck of a lot more than Josh Morrissey and Tucker Poolman, because I think Tucker Poolman is much better suited in a third pairing role than kind of a square peg in a round hole kind of situation, especially if he's not going to be out there against a McDavid or a Matthews. So if and we saw that last game that Maurice trusted putting Pionk and Morrissey, and I thought they were both very good in that game. I really liked how all 3 pairs looked. So, that's something to watch for sure.
Mike, to that point or to that comment, I go back to Elliot Friedman's 31 Thoughts from earlier this week, and he had a couple points about the Jets, and one of them sort of talks about one of the conversations, and I'm quoting this, that might come out of Winnipeg's late season swoon is coach/management control of roster. And you go back to the trade deadline day, where after the deadline, when the only move was acquiring Jordie Benn, and Cheveldayoff really spoke highly about Ville Heinola and about how Heinola might be sort of a trade deadline acquisition for the Jets. And then it's taken obviously weeks since then to come to fruition that he's now in the Jets lineup for a second consecutive game. Do you think there's maybe a bit of a philosophical divide between Maurice and Cheveldayoff? I guess specifically pertaining to the usage of Heinola?
Right. So first of all, I've seen people speculate that there's a rift or something. There's no rift. It's not like they're screaming at each other. Cheveldayoff's demanding Maurice do this, and Maurice is telling him where to go. But that being said, no question. I mean, and that's not unusual in a management coach situation where you've got a general manager who spearheads the prospects and the guys that they bring in, and he probably has opinions on what guys might be ready. But ultimately, the coach is paid to coach, and the coach is hired by the manager to do that very job. So I just think, if we're trying to find something that more nefarious about it, I don't think that's the case. But I would not be surprised, in the very least, if, based on what Kevin Cheveldayoff had to say after the trade deadline, if he would really like to see some of the younger guys get a bit of a look. And we know that really hasn't been the case. I mean, Ville Heinola played that one game in Toronto. The Jets won. And then Paul Maurice talked about a rotation, including one of the players Kevin Cheveldayoff brought in, Jordy Ben. Presumably, Kevin Cheveldayoff also wanted to see Jordy Ben get in, right? He's the one who made the trade for him. And I'm sure he likes to see Logan Stanley get in too. That's a first-round draft pick that he made a few years ago. So I don't think there's any animosity there, but for sure, if you're the general manager, you'd like to see some of these players that you've picked and that you've kind of brought up through the development system get a look. And it maybe took a little longer than everybody would have liked. Ville will get a fourth game this season and a second in a row here. We'll see how long this lasts. But, I mean, I'm sure like everything in the off season, especially when things aren't going as well as maybe you'd hope, you go over it, you review, you see what could be done differently. And I'm sure that will be one of the many topics that's up for discussion.
Mike, there's no shortage of players right now, specifically forwards, that are struggling to score goals. And, we talked about a few of them earlier. Kyle Connor doesn't have any goals in his last 6 games. I think Mason Appleton doesn't have any goals in 17 games now.
Since Jason Bell did a big feature on him, by the way. Make sure you remind Jay of that. I told Jay he is the local journalism equivalent of the Sports Illustrated cover curse.
And we actually had Jay on that day that the story ran in the Free Press, and it was a great story. But we'll go with that. It's the Jay Bell jinx.
Yeah, the Jay Bell jinx. I like it.
and we'll get into the golf game in a second, Mike, because we want to know who won it. And it looked like you guys had a beautiful day out at Larders. But Pierre-Luc Dubois is the guy that I wanted to ask you about, and I don't want to single him out because, as I mentioned, other players on the Jets are struggling, but for you, how important is it for Dubois to score a goal, hopefully more than one goal in these last 4 games? Because it seems like his offensive game has really struggled over the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at Dubois' numbers. Like, he's put up some points for sure, but they've all happened in clusters, right? Like there's some real streakiness to his game. I don't know what it's. I know at one point I had looked, and like 18 out of his first 30 games with the Jets, he didn't have any points, and he had his 19 points at the time in the other 11 games. So, which I guess we have to remember, he's just 22, and that's not unusual necessarily for a young player to be very streaky like that. Obviously, you'd like to find a little more consistency, and for a guy who is, on the second power play unit, has pretty much been cemented in the top 6, you'd like to get a little more offense for sure. To Pierre-Luc Dubois' defense, the Jets have not had a lot of practices this year. He's moved around with all different line mates. He's moved around positions as well. So I think that there's been maybe a longer than expected period of growing pains here that in some ways is understandable for a young player still trying to get his bearings in this new market. That being said, I think Pierre-Luc Dubois played the best hockey of his career in the playoffs, and especially against Toronto. If you're the Jets, if you're potentially playing the Leafs, you hope that you could get the Pierre-Luc Dubois from a year ago, and the way he kind of ran wild against the Leafs, big, mean, physical, scoring big goals. I've seen signs of that, guys. Like I've seen, especially when the Jets have played Montreal, I see some extra fire in the belly of Dubois. He probably gets a little fired up playing, the hometown team. And, I hope we see that either down the stretch here or more importantly, when the playoffs start, because I think there's a real game breaker there. If Pierre-Luc Dubois can kind of find that piece of his game, he has the ability alone to be an impact player and a difference maker. And so I think that, when we talk about this last week, these last 4 games, trying to get him in the right frame of mind should be near the top of the priority list.
Saturday morning, Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. Mike joins us from the arena where the Jets are taking their game day skate, an optional game day skate, I might add, ahead of tonight's contest against the Ottawa Senators.
Mike,
no Nikolai Ehlers. Sorry, guys. No Nikolai Ehlers out here, by the way. There was some talk yesterday that he might skate today in a non-contact. He's not out here yet. Whether or not and there's only about 6 guys left on the ice, so I'm guessing we're not going to see him today. But there's still time, of course. Nobody's expecting him back for the final 4 games, but obviously you'd like to have him ready for game 1. And I suppose when we talk about the potential delay to the start of the playoffs, if there's a silver lining, every extra day maybe gives Nikolai Ehlers a chance to get healthier.
Certainly benefits the Jets with Ehlers and Montreal with their litany of injuries. I'm sure that they wouldn't mind having an extra 5 days between the end of the regular season and the start of the playoffs.
Well, you know what, Mike, and that's what I was going to ask you about, that idea of, because you have that gap. Normally we talk about this rest versus rhythm for goaltenders, the guy like Connor Hellebuyck who wants to play every game. You might say, well, he's had the most starts in the NHL at 42, maybe give the guy a little time off. But because of that gap, you most likely are going to see him. What would you think in the last 4 games? We know, I think I saw Kenny tweet that he's already off the ice.
He's playing tonight. He was the first guy off.
Yeah, so he's the first guy off. You got to think, obviously, they're split it. But do you think you have to give him that start? The question for me is that Friday game against Toronto. We may see a Marlies team for the Leafs because they might not want to have to even bring everyone here. But what do you see in terms of the goaltending because of that long layoff after the uncertainty of the start of the first round?
I think he for sure plays in that Toronto game because exactly what you said, his rhythm would get disrupted. If he plays, he's going to play tonight, and then if he's going to play one of Monday or Tuesday, and then if he doesn't play again until the start of the playoffs, like that could be over a week, and I don't think they want that. I think in a lot of ways the Friday game might work out perfectly, that it gives them kind of a last tune-up, then they'll obviously have some practice time in there. Look, if they go into that game next Friday and either 3rd or 4th is cemented and the game means absolutely nothing, and Toronto it means nothing too if they've already established 1st or 2nd, presumably 1st, maybe we see, Hellebuyck and Brossoit split the game, or I don't know. I mean, I guess you could do something there, but I do think he at the very least gets in. I just don't see them giving him that much time off. Because he wouldn't want it, and he would say that it would be counterproductive at that point.
All righty, last question for you, Mike. We referenced the golf game at the beginning of the interview. You started 8-6-7-5-3. Did you finish the 09 on the golf game?
So it's funny. We were talking on the course after 5 holes, and I was 5/7 of the way towards the Jenny. How do I possibly get a 0? And then Jay Bell came up with the great. He used the CFL Grey Cup ticket rollover rule that anything over 9 reverts to 0. So Jay said, well, if you put up a 10 on this hole, that we'll call it a 0. I put up a 5 on the 6th hole, so that ruined the Jenny. I said to Jay, so you mean I got to go 10-9 on my next 2 holes? Like, that's great that I can say I did that, but it's going to completely ruin my round. But you can bet that we were all singing the song a lot that day because of my first 5 scores. But yeah, I rebounded nicely. 8-6-7 is not the way you'd like to start any golf round, guys. But I rebounded with a fairly tidy 96 on the day, and I finished second. I beat I beat Jason Bell and Scott Billick. Kenny took home the title as expected. No holes in one for Kenny, but he only beat me by 5 strokes. He was off his game a bit. To his defense, the Manitoba Golf Tour was just starting. He hadn't played yet all year. I had 1 round under my belt for whatever that was worth. But it was a good day on the course for sure. And we were just happy in a way that the Jets pulled out the win the night before, because we had all joked, can you imagine if they've lost 8 in a row? We're going to be standing on the first tee. Imagine that news drops of like a coaching change or something as we're all standing on the tee box. So at least things calmed down for a couple days.
And Mike, you beat Jay. That's all that really matters.
That is all that matters. Yeah. I will remind him of that every opportunity. In fact, I'd like to announce my retirement from the sport of golf. That's giving him no more chances to reclaim the title.
I don't think it's a fair comparison though. Jay had to play the whole game with Marty Bird on his shoulder, and that's just, that just impacts the swing. There's nothing good about that.
And the crushing weight of knowing that he threw Mason Appleton off his game with the curve.
Exactly right. Mike McIntyre covers the Winnipeg Jets for the Winnipeg Free Press. He's a good friend of the program. Mike, be well. We'll see you again soon. Enjoy the rest of your duties this morning and then tonight's podcast.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
There he goes. Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press joining us on the program. Going to take a quick break, pay some bills. When we come back, much more Jets talk still to come on the show tonight. Dave's pointing. Smash the like button while we go to break. Still to come, Ian Mendes for the perspective from the Ottawa Senators. And Jeff O'Neill, O-Dog, joins us at 11 o'clock as well to talk more about the Jets. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours, and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve Sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Saturday morning, welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Dave Minuk made it just under the wire after he goes and visits with Mr. Ginsburg during the commercial breaks. Even you guys just can't get enough of each other. Is that basically what I'm led to believe?
That's true.
Okay, that's nice. That kind of bonding, that kind of friendship, that kind of connectivity.
It's the show between the show. That's basically what it is.
It's true. It's the outtakes of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show that nobody besides those of us behind the scenes get to see how the sausage is made. And I can assure you, you don't want to see that at all. This segment brought to you by our friends at Bernstein's Deli, official deli of Illegal Curve Hockey and home of the Illegal Curve Sandwich. Located in the Corden Village Mall, Bernstein's Deli has been Winnipeg's deli destination for over 30 years. For more information, find them on Facebook or at bernsteinsdeli.com. If you're craving an Illegal Curve sandwich for the next month or so, you're going to have to make it at home yourself. Now, it's not that difficult to do. You can do it. You go to Bernstein's and you pick up some chicken schnitzel, and then you pick up some salami from them, and you pick up some honey mustard, and you pick up some rye bread, and you put it all together, and you got an Illegal Curve sandwich. Because Bernstein's is undergoing some renovations on the restaurant side of the business. The deli is still open.
By the way, good timing for that. Sadly.
That's perfect timing. Exactly right. You know, they timed it to be perfectly during the shutdown where you can't eat inside a restaurant anyway. So they're doing some renovations. So no hot food available from our friends at Bernstein's for the next month or so. But the deli counter is still open. They're still making sandwiches. They're still making salads. So you can still check them out for all of that. Those needs 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Pardon me. Tuesday through Saturday. Check them out, Bernstein's Deli. All the information available at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Also, we should also mention that if you want, you have to pay a little bit extra for this, but Drew Mindell will make you an Illegal Curve sandwich, and he will ship it out to you as long as it's within the city limits.
That's true. My shipping fees are exorbitant, though. But that being said, that is something I'm willing to do for you, our loyal audience here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We go the extra mile for our audience. Let's see Rennie and Kenny try and do something like that. They don't offer to make any sandwiches. They only wear headbands. We make sandwiches here on the show.
Those are our boys.
I know those are our boys.
We should probably wish Weber a happy birthday. It's his birthday today.
I saw that. I think it was Coffee and TV who said that it was a happy birthday to Mr. Weeb. So Dave, we'll have to give Kenny some of the birthday bumps later on today. I'm not sure if you can do that in a COVID appropriate manner, but maybe some virtual birthday bumps for our buddy Ken Weeb.
I don't know that I would be doing that in a regular world, so I'm not so sure that I'm worried about a COVID world, Drew.
Well, 29 again for Mr. Weeb. So, nice to see you. Happy birthday, Kenny. Let's talk about, we talked about the hot seat of Paul Maurice, and we bandied that about. What about the stubbornness? That was a big topic earlier, and we know about the hot dog joke, and he doesn't like ketchup on his hot dog, and great, that's all fine and good. Is he too stubborn as a head coach? He denies it, as you would expect. He says he's got some built-in philosophies about how things are supposed to work, but he doesn't believe he's stubborn. From your perspective, guys, do you think that there's an element of stubbornness to Paul Maurice's coaching?
I think there is. And, we've talked, and, just looking at, what's happened, this year, you think about, how long we were waiting for Jansen Harkins to get into the lineup. And I realized that the Jets were winning a lot of those games and were healthy, Dave, during that stretch. But we've certainly seen a reluctance, to play some of the younger players. And Jansen Harkins, even though he was drafted 6 years ago, is still a relatively young player. So I think that's the obvious one that, sometimes, we would like to see some of the younger prospects in the Jets system in there. And it was only because Tucker Poolman was injured that, let's not forget that. I mean, Logan Stanley wouldn't have played that many games earlier in the season if it wasn't for the Poolman injury, right? But you have to give credit for Paul Maurice for sticking with Logan Stanley and having the confidence in his game to keep him in the lineup, even when when Tucker Poolman was back. And obviously Nathan Beaulieu's injury is the other, big factor there as well, right, guys? But I think you have to look at, not only the unwillingness sometimes to play younger players, but it's also, some of the line combinations and coaching decisions he makes in game. And I think, we know that Paul Maurice relies heavily on a player like Adam Lowry, for example, and for good reason. I mean, Lowry is a guy that is one of those kind of jack of all trade players, right? More so on the penalty kill, but we've started to see him more and more on the power play as well. So I think that, sometimes he relies maybe too much on one line or two lines. And obviously, the fourth line, Drew, is something that you have mentioned many times on this show, right? This is the first year in a long time, maybe ever, that Paul Maurice has used this fourth line this much. Right. And it's because, you have Nate Thompson and Trevor Lewis and Matty Perreault, veterans. And then, you've got Jansen Harkins on that line now. But I mean, that's something that I think, I would call it maybe a little bit stubborn, that he's not willing to roll 4 lines. Paul Maurice likes to, if you compare him to certain other coaches like Barry Trotz, for example, in New York, he plays his 4th line more. So I think that's also, something that you could say maybe is a little bit of stubbornness, but it's also his coaching style. It's his coaching philosophy. So, I mean, and again, you guys know this. You could pick any coach in the NHL, and you could probably say that some of them are stubborn in this way or that way. But I think that there's no doubt that, there are certain players on in this system that you could say, probably deserved maybe more playing time this year. Ville Heinola is one of them for sure. And then depending on, how ready you think other players are to take that next level. But having said that, guys, I mean, you look at, all the players that have taken a step forward in their game, right? Like Paul Maurice deserves a little bit of credit for Andrew Kopp. He deserves a little bit of credit for Mason Appleton. Obviously, Pascal Vincent and the coaching staff for the Moose, deserve a lot of credit for getting them to the NHL level. But you also have to give Maurice credit when players are succeeding. So even though he might be stubborn in terms of favoring older players over younger players, he's also got a lot, and players have had career years during his tenure.
Dave, before I get you to answer, here's the latest from Bell MTS Place. According to our buddy Mike McIntyre, injured Winnipeg Jets forward Nikolai Ehlers has come out for a twirl here at the arena. Loud cheers and stick taps from the few other guys still on the ice as he emerged. He's working towards a return for the playoffs. Our buddy Sean Reynolds continues to add to that. He's skating, he's not shooting as we didn't expect him to, but just the sign of Nikolai Ehlers being on the ice at the end of the optional game day skate today is a good sign with the playoffs approaching, Mr. Minuk.
Yeah, and as a quick segue or a quick sidebar on the Nikolai Ehlers stuff, how important has he been and how important is his role for this Jets team? And, again, as he pointed this out, when the Jets' losing streak was beginning, Nikolai Ehlers was in the lineup. But throughout the course of the losing streak, you saw I guess you were reinforced how important he is to this team and what a big part of this team Nikolai Ehlers is. So, yeah, that's a very good sign for the Winnipeg Jets to have him back skating. Sean has a video on his Twitter. You can see him, taking passes, obviously not shooting because he's not cleared to shoot yet. So, but a very good sign, and especially – look, we talked about it, and as he mentioned it, with Montreal and Winnipeg, when you have guys, and I'm sure, look, every team, no team gets the end of a playoff, the beginning of the playoffs healthy. It just never happens. You're always going to have guys who are banged up. So to have a little bit of time, and the truth is almost all these teams are in a very similar boat. Montreal, to your point, Drew, earlier, will have, maybe a few extra days, but the reality is all these teams are going to get. So remember, you were outraged. Oh, these games are meaningless between Calgary and Vancouver. Well, what are they doing? They're probably affording these teams the opportunity to heal up and get some necessary rest for all these guys. Because look, Paul Maurice said yesterday, Neil Pionk is 98%. That's probably generous, but the reality is he said he's 98%. And very soon, I'm sure, now that the skate is over, we're going to be hearing about tonight's lineup for the Jets. So we'll have that news for you guys. As it comes
30 minutes probably for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, so again, like I said, it's one of those situations where we'll see what happens with those. But again, ultimately, all of these guys are banged up. All of these guys are dealing with things, and they play through it because that's just the way they are, and that's what they're. It's just what they do as players. But at the end of the day, this kind of opportunity will give them a chance to heal up. So that's a good thing. Back to the coaching thread.
Yeah, back to the question. Point. So the question. Let me just rehash the question for anybody just joining us. The question was about Paul Maurice and his stubbornness. Earlier in the show we talked about the potential for his seat to be hot, depending on the results of the Jets, in the first round of the playoffs. So. Yeah, and then a lot of the conversation this week was about stubbornness. Is he too stubborn with his deployment? Is he too stubborn with his lineup decisions? And now I want to, you can follow up and pick up on that thought, Dave.
I mean, again, is it stubbornness or is this coaching style? I mean, that the point as he just made. I mean, look, there's a million. Look, every whether you're media, whether you're a fan, you have an opinion. Everybody thinks they're a coach. Everybody thinks that they have the answer to what ails the Winnipeg Jets. So they offer up their opinions. But ultimately, at the end of the day, Paul Maurice is the one who has to make that decision. And so you can call it stubbornness, or you can say it's a his coaching philosophy, as he just pointed out. And again, you can disagree with it all you want, which we do. We do a lot. We often will say, oh, we think player X should be in. Ville Heinola is an easy example. Or player Y should be doing this, or he should be doing this. Blake Wheeler should drop down to the third line. It doesn't really matter what your opinion is. You can have an opinion on the team, and that's great. But again, I think he's got a philosophy. He sticks to it. Is he unwilling to change? Sure. Do I see him evolving as much as he should? Maybe not. But I mean, when he was called about it, he was asked about it last availability on Friday. And he said, I played 10 rookies when he was asked about the idea of not playing young guys. Because we know he tends to default to veterans, right? When you see Jordy Ben in the lineup on the left side over Logan Stanley or Ville Heinola, steam comes out of people's ears because you're thinking to yourself, what are you doing? You know that those guys have more ability than Jordy Ben on the left side, even though Jordy Ben is a 500, plus game NHL veteran. But at the same time, you have to think to yourself, so that's where he tends to default to that veteran over ability. And we can disagree with it, but that's his coaching philosophy. So I'm not trying to quibble with you and trying to thread the line between, stubbornness and philosophy. But again, it's, one person sees potato, one person sees potato. He sees his philosophy and wouldn't acknowledge that it's a stubbornness issue. It's what he chooses as his right as head coach to make for his lineup. We would and again, all I would say is we would disagree with the, some of the personnel decisions he makes, but at the end of the day, again, he has to live and die by the decisions he makes. And again, do I want to phrase it as stubbornness? Yeah, I think there are certain elements for sure, because, the idea of, like I just illustrated, Jordy Ben playing on his left side, which is not his strong side, is in my view would be an acknowledgement of him being stubborn. Playing veterans who what they are, what their ceiling is, over young guys who could potentially elevate their games to the next level. We know what Logan Stanley was able to do between the end of last season with the Manitoba Moose and the start of training camp this year. And, he's gotten better, as he's talked about earlier, he's gotten better throughout the course of the year, right? So again, it's giving guys opportunities and not necessarily sticking within that framework of, well, I need to have Derek Forbort in because, well, maybe Derek Forbort's been really good because Neil Pionka has been a very good defenseman. So that's the only thing I would quibble with, is this idea of his clinging to the veterans. And that's, again, like I said, that's what I think he does.
Saturday morning, you're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms. Of course, we're talking about the Winnipeg Jets. They're in action later on tonight against the Ottawa Senators. The IC post-game show, that'll go live later on tonight, right around 8:30, 8:40 p.m., give or take a couple minutes, depending on when the game ends. So when the contest ends, come back here to our YouTube channel. We'll be talking about tonight's game against the Ottawa Senators. This segment of the show brought to you by Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty, official realtors of Illegal Curve Hockey. When 95% of your clients come via referral, it shows your commitment to honesty, integrity, and a total dedication to client satisfaction. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, come shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia online at zappiagroup.com. What I'm really interested in as we sort of talk about stubbornness here is, when the playoffs begin. And let's assume the Jets finish third. And I think I'm relatively safe in assuming that. Montreal obviously mathematically can still leapfrog the Jets. The Jets can clinch third as early as tonight with a win against the Senators and a Montreal loss in regulation against the Leafs. If the Jets are going to be locked in against the Oilers, and if we see Mark Scheifele get the matchup against Connor McDavid again, then that to me is a coach being too stubborn, because that matchup has not worked once this year. The numbers for McDavid against the Jets are astronomical. And we saw last year in the bubble that Pierre-Luc Dubois matched up against Austin Matthews, the best Toronto centerman, was a matchup he could handle. McDavid is better than Matthews, but he's not he's not substantially better than Matthews. Matthews is a damn good hockey player. If it's Scheifele against McDavid on game 1 against Edmonton, that to me is a coach being too stubborn and seeing something there where nothing exists that should say that this is a matchup that he can deploy and be comfortable with.
Right, and we've talked about this before in the post-game show and the Saturday show about how it makes a lot more sense to have Pierre-Luc Dubois' line, whoever is on that line, because as Mike McIntyre mentioned, guys, last segment, I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois has been on the wing and he's had different line mates, different wingers when he's up the middle, right? So I think there's a good chance that Nikolai Ehlers is going to be flanking Pierre-Luc Dubois, and maybe it's Paul Stastny on the wing. I guess it could always be, Kyle Connor as well. I mean, we'll see what happens here. But yeah, I think, there's that, Drew. There's, the matchups that Paul Maurice tries to get. And it's also, sticking with certain pairs, both on for forwards and defense, right? Like, look at Josh Morrissey and Tucker Poolman, right? Like, the advanced statistics say that Dylan DeMello is your best defensive defenseman. We all know that, right? Mm-hmm. When it comes to expected goals. So, I mean, it makes sense to have DeMello with Morrissey. And, I would rather see Morrissey and Pionk together than Morrissey and Poolman. And obviously, guys, we're going to have to figure out, like, who are the Jets' 6 defensemen, right? Like we talked about it. If Logan Stanley, Mike McIntyre answered Dave's question. If Logan Stanley is in the lineup, most likely Ville Heinola won't be in the lineup. There's always an outside chance that, I guess, Jordy Ben is in the lineup and Heinola and Stanley aren't. But based on skill and the way they've played this year, I think we'd all agree that we'd rather see, one of Heinola or Stanley. And so that goes back to stubbornness as well. And is that all, preferring veterans over younger players? Yeah, it's possible, but it's his decision-making. That's what it ultimately comes down to, guys. And I mean, if we dissected, everything about coaching, then we can get into systems. And, I would point out to, Nikolai Ehlers, has always kind of stayed on the second power play unit as opposed to the first power play unit, even though I think we'd all agree that Ehlers is the most skilled player on the team. At the very least, he's a top 3 skilled player on this Jets team. So why not have him out there on the top power play unit, right? Like, that's the whole argument that, Blake Wheeler needs a reduced role on this team. Wheeler's still really good on the power play. I think we'd all agree with that. But what I'm trying to say is that, Maurice has been a little bit stubborn in giving Ehlers that number 1 power play time. And I think there's something to be said, guys, for spreading the wealth a little bit and having guys like Dubois and Ehlers and Pionk on that second power play unit. But, it's a question that as Dave said, everyone has their opinion. And at the end of the day, Maurice is the one who calls the shots. And if the Jets, are successful or unsuccessful in the playoffs, a lot of the attention is going to be on him. And that's the way it should be. When you're in a results-based business and the Jets haven't been past the first round since 2018, I'll say it again. I mean, the expectation for this Jets team is not just get into the playoffs. It's not one and done. There are expectations. And Dave's right. I mean, maybe you get a little bit of leeway here because this has been a unique season, 56 games, all in one division. But you wonder if, Maurice is coaching this team and they didn't get out of the first round, you have to think that next year there's going to be even more pressure on him.
Let's hold that thought. Take a quick break. When we come back, more Jets talk. We're going to be joined by Ian Mendes of The Athletic as well. Much more to come. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We are live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Saturday morning, welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms. Our guest joining us on the show now from The Athletic. He covers the Ottawa Senators. Good friend of Illegal Curve, Ian Mendes, joins the show. Ian, good morning. Nice to see you. How you doing, buddy?
Guys, doing fantastic. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Ian obviously brought you on. Talk about the Senators. They're in town to face the Jets for the final time tonight. And, you know, Ian, the Senators to me are really one of the great stories in the NHL this season. We know how terrible their struggles have been. We know that they've gone through, I believe, 36 or 37 goaltenders. I'm not sure what the count is officially up to at this point in time. But, you know, over the last month, this has been one of the best teams in the NHL. And you wrote about this, you know, a few weeks back for The Athletic, sort of talking about why this is more than just a meaningless sort of dead cat bounce. There's a sign of optimism for the first time in a lot of years in our nation's capital over the performance of the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting here, guys, is you got to go back and look at this big picture, okay? So Ottawa in the last 3 seasons have finished 30th, 31st and 30th overall, right? So like the bar is pretty low. Like even if you look at it today, I haven't refreshed the standings here on this Saturday morning, but I think they're like 24th overall or whatever it is. And yet it seems like a quantum leap forward, doesn't it? Like in most places you'd be like, wow, they finished 25th overall. Whoop-de-doo. But here in Ottawa, it's like, wow, it feels really good. And I think a big part of that, guys, is the last 5 weeks or 6 weeks, they have been a legitimate good team, not just a okay, like legitimately they've been good. You guys, I think, have seen that against Winnipeg a little bit lately. If you juxtapose the version of the Ottawa Senators you have seen the last couple of times the Jets faced Ottawa versus what you saw back in, I think, January, February, you'd be like, wow, that's a different team. And so that's why this is feeling a lot different. It's that the young kids are the ones that are doing it. These are the guys that you know are going to be part of the core. Drake Batherson, Josh Norris, Brady Tkachuk, etc. You know that they're going to be the ones delivering, and they're the ones delivering right now. So there's a real sense of optimism for the first time, I would say, since they got deep in the playoffs in 2017. I think there's a real palpable sense of excitement here in Ottawa.
And Ian, you know, I found for The Athletic most recently, you had a fan survey. And in the beginning, opening paragraph, you're talking about kind of your expectations weren't the highest for the survey, just based on the way surveys can go and how, you know, depending on how the team's doing, you know, fans can be a little bit irrational, let's say. But, you know, I thought it was really interesting to read all of the different questions. And, you know, in addition to, you know, how many people gave Pierre Dorion, Senators GM, a good grade, I believe it was a B. I found it really interesting when it got to the questions about the outlook of the team, and that kind of ties in to what we were just talking about. And there is a good percentage of Senators fans that believe this team can make the playoffs, you know, next season. Obviously, you know, it might help a little bit if it was a North Division. We know that's not going to happen. But is that probably, you know, looking at the fan survey that you ran for The Athletic, was that the most surprising to you? Is the amount of, or maybe it's not surprising the way the Senators have played lately, but just the optimism, you know, that this can be a playoff team, you know, not too long from now?
Yeah, I think so. And in fact, like one of the questions we asked in this survey was like, what's the one adjective you would use to describe your feeling towards the team right now? Is it optimistic? Optimistic? Is it pessimistic? Is it indifferent? Is it frustrated? And it was like 86% said optimistic. And you just have to understand where this market has been. As I mentioned, the last 3 seasons, they've been languishing at the bottom of the standings. So to get that type of optimism from a fan base, as you mentioned, Canadian or just good hockey markets are fickle by nature, right? Like, because this is what we do in Canada, right? We micromanage and we microanalyze every little thing, and we're never happy unless our team wins the Stanley Cup, and that hasn't happened in almost 30 years. So it's really hard to get this type of optimism around a Canadian team. But again, that speaks to the kind of scorched earth approach that Ottawa took in the last 3 years, that they're starting to see some of the seeds of that, starting to blossom. But I think that is absolutely that. That's what surprised me. I think if you had done this poll in January or February and ask what's your optimism level, I'm not sure it reaches 40% or 50%. And to have it at 85% was really, really rather eye-opening to me.
Saturday morning, you're watching, you're listening, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. Our guest talking about the Senators, tonight's opponent of the Winnipeg Jets, is Ian Mendes of The Athletic.
You know, Ian, I'm lucky enough to watch and cover the Manitoba Moose in addition to covering the Winnipeg Jets. So I've seen those Belleville Senators for the last few years. And I could tell you right now, they have a lot of reason for optimism, because I saw those players when they were getting time with Belleville. And, the jump that some of these guys have made to the NHL isn't that surprising given how good they looked just, a year or two ago. But, to those, speaking to that idea of the young guys, like you lose Thomas Chabot, who I believe is done for the season. I think after that hit from Logan Stanley against the Jets last week. But then you have a guy like Jacob Bernard-Docker who comes into the lineup and gets it an opportunity to play. Is that what you're seeing in Ottawa? Is just that the rise of the youth and all of these young guys who are getting these opportunities, and they're not just getting them they're seizing them, and they're really doing something with it.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. I think that is a great point, is that you and like you said, you've seen this last couple of years. You would have seen Josh Norris become a 30-goal scorer, Alex Formanton, Drake Batherson. Some of these really good players that have been good for Ottawa at the NHL level have slowly kind of moved up the system. And the funny thing is, in Ottawa this year, there's a segment of the fans that felt like it didn't happen fast enough, that defensemen like Eric Brandstrom, or earlier this season, Christian Wolanin, now it's Jacob Bernard-Docker. People wanted to see them play all the time. And DJ Smith's and Pia Dorian's philosophy was patience. We got to slowly integrate these guys into the lineup. And I don't know that it necessarily happened at the pace that a lot of fans wanted, because there was times this season where their back end featured Braden Coburn, Eric Goodbranson, even Josh Brown recently. Up front, they had guys like Derek Stepan, Alex Galchenyuk, like veteran guys that were like, you felt like they were just placeholders. And I don't know if there's what the direct correlation is, but they struggled early in the season with veteran, older guys in the lineup. They struggled. Younger guys in the lineup, they're doing better. I think it's too easy of a line to say that, oh, look, if they had just played the kids all season long, they would have been good, because I do think goaltending has been a major factor. And I think the minute that they started getting above average goaltending is the minute that they turned this thing around. But absolutely, this is a youth movement full on. And next season, you're going to see guys like Shane Pinto probably be in this lineup all the time. Brandstrom's probably going to be an everyday player. And so you're going to see a pretty young team come September, October, or whenever that next season starts.
Yeah, well, hopefully it'll be more of a normal year next year, but time will tell on that front. Ian Mendes of The Athletic, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. And Ian, you mentioned goaltending, and I was going to ask you about that, because within every celebratory conversation about the Senators right now, the goaltending is still the big question. I mean, Matt Murray makes the same amount of money as Connor Hellebuyck. I think he actually even makes more than Connor Hellebuyck by about $100,000, give or take. What evidence is there that Matt Murray is going to be good enough to lead the Senators to have above average goaltending for the next 3 seasons?
It's the great question, Drew. It really is, because I think if you ask people in Pittsburgh, and when Matt Murray was traded to Ottawa, I don't think that was a bad move by the Senators. In fact, I think, you're getting a 26-year-old goalie with 2 Stanley Cup rings, and you're only essentially giving up a second-round pick. I don't think a lot of people in the marketplace had a problem with that. Where the eyebrows got raised was a few weeks later, he signs a 4-year, $25 million extension. And you're like, wait, what? Like, honestly, because you talk to people in Pittsburgh, they're like, look, when Matt Murray's going, he's good. And I talked to Jim Rutherford a few weeks ago, and Jim Rutherford was like, when Matt Murray was at his peak, we felt so confident. He's like, I can't tell you how confident we felt. But then think about it. They still felt comfortable enough to trade that guy a few months ago. So obviously they felt like he wasn't going to get it back on track. And they'll tell you in Pittsburgh, the things that undermine Matt Murray were 2 things: injuries and inconsistency. And if I were to summarize Matt Murray's first season here in Ottawa, I would say injuries and inconsistency. But the thing is, there's just enough kind of tantalizing play from him to keep you going. But the problem is, as you mentioned, Drew, it's the $6 million contract. That's not a gamble. That's not a contract you give somebody on a gamble. You know what I mean? A gamble is a 1-year deal, a 2-year deal. It's not a 4-year deal. So they went all in on Matt Murray. And the good news is he looked a lot better in the back half of the season. He looked just positionally sound. He looked he looks calmer. I guess the layperson's way to say it. He just looked calm in the net in the back half of the season. I don't know where that's going to lead though next season. We're going to come back in the next season, and we're going to have the exact same questions we had about Matt Murray going into January. We're going to have them again in October. And that's kind of one of those nagging issues, I think, in the back of the minds of Ottawa Senators fans is we're probably only going to be as good as Matt Murray, and we don't know how good Matt Murray is going to be.
And Ian, I just wrote it down. We're going to make sure that when we have you on in late September, early October, that we ask that exact same question, phrased the exact same way about Matt Murray. But yeah, and I think, to your point, Ian, Murray was playing better as the season progressed, and he's still at an age where, that he's not towards the end of his career. He's still a relatively young goalie. And I think, he's proven he's got a couple Stanley Cup rings. You can never forget about that. It'll obviously help to have guys like Crosby and Malkin and Letang on the team, but Murray was sensational during those runs. But I wanted to ask you about Connor Brown, because I went back and I looked, and Connor Brown has 9 points against the Jets this year in, I forget if it's 7 games or 8 games. And obviously, this guy's had an unbelievable year for the Senators with 19 goals. And I think people forget that in his first full season with the Leafs, he scored 20 goals. And Brown was a player that Leafs fans were not happy to lose. In fact, they were pretty upset that they lost him. So the question I had for you is just, how important has he been to this team? We talk about, all the young players on this team like Brady Tkachuk and Norris and Batherson, Fermenton. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, Tim Stützle, but he just seems to be just exceeding expectations. Just how well he's played this year. And, he has a really good shot to hit 20 goals this year. It might happen as early as tonight with the way he's played against the Jets this year.
Yeah. And I think Ezra, I think they played them 9 times. I think tonight's the Saturday game, the 10th time. Ottawa and Winnipeg. Yeah, it's nuts. They play each other 10 times. I look at Connor Brown, and you go back to the trade deadline for the Maple Leafs. And what was the thing that Toronto was looking for? They were like, man, we sure could use this 2-way forward. It's almost like if we could make a copy of Zach Hyman, that'd be perfect. Well, that's what Connor Brown is. He is a guy who can kind of just seamlessly float in and out of your second and third line. And he's leading this team in goal scoring. And, I got to give full credit to my colleague, Wayne Scanlon, who is, for people who know Wayne, he's a writer here in Ottawa, writes for Sportsnet, and had a column this week just talking about Connor Brown and why isn't Connor Brown getting some love for the Selke Trophy? And Wayne Scanlon was right. You start to look at Connor Brown's underlying numbers here, okay? And he leads all forwards in the NHL in shorthanded time on ice. There's not a single forward in the NHL who has played more shorthanded time this season than Connor Brown. Then you start to look at, he's got 4 shorthanded goals, which is tops. He's, he's a top 5 in takeaways. He's doing all these things. And, he's got 19 goals. If you prorate this over a full season, that's a 30-goal season. And I'm not saying Connor Brown's a 30-goal guy, but he had a 7-game goal streak. You figured he was going to just cool off after that, right? He had 7 games with a goal 7 straight games this season. You're like, okay, well, that was a fun little heater from Connor Brown. He scored 5 goals in his last 8 games, guys. Like he hasn't really cooled off. So this is a remarkable season. When you look at all of the underlying defensive metrics, marry that with the potential 30-goal season, you're almost looking at a very rare unicorn type season from Connor Brown. And so he is the perfect guy to kind of be a young veteran, kind of a stabilizing force here. And I think the best thing to say about Connor Brown is he has moved past Evgeny Dadonov on the depth chart of right wingers on this team. And people thought when they signed Dadonov, and I put myself in this group, I was like, wow, they got a legitimate top 6 forward in Evgeny Dadonov. And now they're set. Connor Brown has been better, and he's been arguably their most valuable forward this season.
Saturday morning, it's 10:30. Ian Mendes of The Athletic is our guest on the show. We're talking about the Senators and the Jets for the final time tonight, later on at the downtown arena here in Winnipeg.
Can I just ask a question here, Drew?
Yeah.
Are you just throwing, is that the slightest jab when you say here in our downtown arena?
No.
It feels like you're just hammering home the point. You guys in Winnipeg have a downtown arena and we play in a cornfield here.
That's
what
me.
it felt like.
First of all, I used to live in Ottawa, so I would never say anything bad about the drive from, I used to live in the market, so I used to make the drive from the market down to Canada. I had to go for, the 3 hours it would take me to get there after a work night. So I would never take a jab at the arena. The truth is, Ian, that I have to go out of my way on a regular basis to try and avoid mentioning the corporate name of the arena that's got the naming rights for the arena here in Winnipeg, simply because, at least from my perspective, a little bit of bad blood for how they treated the good folks over at TSN 1290, including us. So I try to go out of my way to not give them a plug when at all possible. That's truly the only reason I do it.
I see. I like it.
Ian, Drew is a petty man.
I'm petty. I'm petty. Look, I'm the first to admit I'm a petty small man when it comes to certain things, and this is one of them.
Well, it's funny, Ian. I did contemplate asking you about the Ottawa and the arena situation, but I'm gonna pivot from that because I really would be more curious about the job that DJ Smith has done. This is his second season as a head coach in the NHL. Obviously, a number of years as an assistant coach in Toronto. How would you evaluate what he's been able to do with this young group in Ottawa?
Well, I think you can only mark him on or judge him based on how the team has kind of performed under him. And as you guys have seen, the last 6 weeks, they've responded. And I think when you get a young group of guys playing quote unquote meaningless games, but doing so with a great degree of success, I think that speaks to they like playing for the coach. At least it feels that way. I think you guys have probably seen teams down the stretch. Games don't matter. You mail it in or not mail it in, but you just maybe you don't go through the wall because you don't love the coach. These guys seem to love DJ Smith. So I think it's there was never any pressure on DJ though this season. It's a rarity that 2 seasons into his tenure as head coach in a Canadian market, he's had no external pressure. But that's going to change next year. It's not a free spot in the bingo card anymore for the Ottawa Senators head coach. There's going to be some realistic expectations. And I think as long as they can take another step forward, I'm not saying they got to be a playoff team next year, but if they can take another tangible step forward under DJ Smith and some of these younger players, Shane Pinto, Jacob Bernard-Docker, Tim Stützle, can take a step forward in their development, I have a feeling that he'll be back for another season. He is heading into the last year of his contract, but I think you're kind of at a crossroads with him next season. You gotta take a step forward and show that you're the right guy for the job moving forward. This is the last kind of messy part of the rebuild, and as they move into the next phase of being a contender, DJ Smith has shown he's the right guy to get them out of the mess. Is he the right guy for the next phase? And I think that's only a question we can answer after, let's say, 50, 60, 70 games next season.
Last question. I was just going to ask you, what are your favorite parts of the Bell Media Corporation? But I guess I'll ask a Senators related question.
Listen, I left on my own terms. But I will say, you know what, and I do say this in all sincerity, especially when you guys reached out and said, hey, do you mind coming on? I love the fact that we're seeing some of the old shows that were under the TSN Bell Media umbrella, I love that they're surviving in these formats. And I'm a big supporter. That's why I said, when you reached out and said, can you come on? 100%. Like, this is what we have to do.
But Ian, that was after you said, how did you get my number, though?
Yeah, that's right. Who is this? But I think it's really important that we, in the quote unquote traditional media, make sure we support projects like this one, because we're all one step away from doing this. And I think it's really cool. I see what Sakaris and Price are doing in Vancouver. I see what Hustler is doing in your market, Andrew Patterson. And I think it's really neat. And I think it's inspiring for people who still work in traditional AM radio in this country to see shows like this going on with obviously the production value and the work that you guys put into it. I think it's inspiring, and it's really cool. So anyway, that's end of my rant about Bell Media and job cuts. I just think it's cool what you guys are doing.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that a lot, Ian, and we had you on a bunch of times when we were still on 1290. We should also mention Brent Wallace and Mark Mathot, who were doing a great job with the Wally and Mathot show as well, right? But the last question I had
Dylan
for
DeMillo
you,
on this week, so Dylan
absolutely,
DeMillo,
we have that on our website as well. But wanted to ask just one question. You mentioned Tim Stützle, and obviously, he's had his ups and downs. But is this what the Senators expected out of Stützle, considering he's 18 years old? You knew you were going to have some growing pains, but sometimes you see that skill, and we've seen it against the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, that this is going to be a special player, and he's going to put up big point totals in this league, and it's probably not going to be too long from now.
Yeah, and he turned 19, I think, on opening night. Like, if it wasn't opening night, it was like he had his 19th birthday. He was 18 at the end of training camp. Like, I think everyone knew that this was going to be a work in progress. There's very few teenagers. The ones that come in and are dominant are the Crosbys and the Lindrosses, and we all knew that he was never in that kind of stratosphere, right? But he's going to be a really good player for a long time, and I think we've seen some spurts of offensive productivity. I think he had 10 points in 14 games in February, was the NHL Rookie of the Month. He had a 3-point night at the Bell Center in the middle of that month, and you thought, okay, well, here we go. We're starting to see this guy blossom, and then right after that, he went 22 games and had just 1 goal. So it's like, oh, okay, well, you got to remember he's a teenager. So you've seen some really great things out of him. You've seen some really uneven play, but I think that's what you kind of expect out of teenagers. Unless you're, like I said, Crosby, Lemieux, Lindros, it's very hard to come into this league and be a point per game player as a teenager. I don't think anyone was expecting that. But at the end of the year, again, if you prorated his stats, he'd be about a 15-goal, 40-point guy. That's not that bad. That's not that bad. Productivity-wise, I think he's 4th or 5th in rookie scoring. He's going to be just fine. And I think in 2 years from now, I think he's going to develop into a 25 to 30 goal scorer in this league. And I think his ceiling is still super high, and it's really fun to watch him with some of the dynamic skill that he brings to the table.
Things are optimistic in the nation's capital. I'm not sure they're optimistic on Parliament Hill, but they're optimistic at the very least in Canada. Ian Mendes covers the Senators for The Athletic. Ian, always appreciate your time. Always appreciate your insight. Thanks so much.
Yeah, Ezra, Dave, Drew, good luck with everything here in the months ahead with the project. Always love being a guest, and I'll talk to you again real soon.
And Ian, just was going to throw one thing after our conversation about the arenas. I think I'm going to put the Arcade Fire Suburbs album on and listen to that this afternoon.
Ironically, speaking of now, this is all going to come all to fruition. I saw Arcade Fire open for U2 at the arena in Canada. Gosh, I'm trying to think how many years ago that would have been now. Probably 15 years ago. Arcade Fire opened for U2 at the arena in Ottawa a lifetime ago as it was.
See, yeah, perfect. Full circle.
There you go. Thank you, Ian.
Yeah, you bet you guys. Have a great day.
There he goes. Ian Mendes covering the Ottawa Senators for The Athletic. Let's take our final commercial break. When we come back, an update from the Winnipeg Jets game day skate. We'll tell you about the lineup decisions and how the Jets are looking to line up and set the roster for tonight's contest against the Senators. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
"I sure do."
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Saturday morning, welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I'm your host, Drew Mindell, with Dave Minuk, with Ezra Ginsburg. Nice to see so many of you joining us on this bright and sunny Saturday morning. At least I assume it's still sunny. I have no idea. I'm in a windowless bunker in my basement. Somebody else can tell me if it's sunny or not, still outside.
Why don't you just put a window in there?
Well, because I'm not sure that I have that necessarily in the budget, and very few people, as far as I know, put a window in their electrical room, because that sort of seems counterproductive to everything else. But if you're throwing some money at the case there, Ezzy, if you're willing to put some money behind your suggestion, then by all means you can come in and, well, I'd say you can send somebody to install a window, because Lord knows I don't want you anywhere in my house.
Yeah, I'll borrow the money from Dave and then I'll give it to you, and then we can get a window in there.
It sounds like a wonderful Ponzi scheme if I've ever heard one. This segment of the show brought to you by Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, officially declared the funniest place in Winnipeg by Illegal Curve Hockey. For over 30 years, Rumors has been bringing Winnipeg the best in stand-up comedy. To purchase tickets or for a list of performers and showtimes, visit rumorscomedyclub.com. I can assure you, Rumors is champing at the bit to reopen. Maybe after this month, we can get through the last of the shutdowns. Fingers crossed. I got my toes crossed for that as well. But if you want to support Rumors in the interim, or if you want to support any of our great small businesses here in Winnipeg, go out, buy a gift card if you can afford it. Eventually it's going to be Christmas time again, and you're going to need some stocking stuffers. So go out, buy some gift cards now, throw them in some stocking, throw them in a drawer, bring them out during Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or whatever you want to celebrate, and maybe support some small local businesses at the same time. Whatever you can do, if you can do anything, would be greatly appreciated, and get the very important Illegal Curve seal of approval. Do we have a seal?
Absolutely. Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
we have a stamp of approval as well.
Dave, your mic is muted. I can see you saying, no, we don't have a seal, but I think we should be notary publics. Maybe we can start, notarizing some documents for people here. I can't see any problem with that strategy whatsoever, right?
Yeah, nothing bad would come from that.
No, there's certainly nothing illegal about that.
And Dave also listens to Seal as well. Kiss from a rose. Yeah.
Promise you an update from about the Jets roster ahead of tonight's game against the Senators. Neil Pionk, who was questionable, didn't skate yesterday at practice. It was an optional game day skate as well this morning. He will not be in the Winnipeg Jets lineup for tonight's game against the Senators. Morrissey and DeMello Forbort and Poolman, Heinola, and Jordy Ben playing on his right side, which is where he's actually had the greatest deal of success in his career. So those are the Jets' D pairings for tonight. Jansen Harkins stays in on the fourth line, so no change to the Jets' forward groups for tonight's game against the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, and obviously, it's unfortunate that Pionk isn't going to be able to play tonight. But as Dave mentioned, the belief is this is not anything long-term, and Pionk should be back in the lineup, hopefully for one of those games against Vancouver. But, another opportunity for Paul Maurice to see Jordy Ben and Ville Heinola. And, even though, I think, some people would rather see Logan Stanley in the lineup over Jordy Ben, I think there's a really good chance that you're going to see Stanley Dave, probably play, at least one of these last three games after tonight's game, right? Maybe he plays even more, but, just another opportunity to see some different looks, right? And, get a player in that maybe otherwise wouldn't have played. We talked about this earlier. I think there's a really good chance with these upcoming games against the Canucks. That's when you see maybe, some forwards who might be a little bit banged up, or, the forwards that have played the majority of the games, maybe you have a few of these guys, and then that maybe gets a guy like, Christian Vesalainen, Dave, into the lineup. So going back to, what we talked about, a great interview, by the way, with Ian Mendes. I mean, Ian has always been, such a great journalist, making the transition from radio to newspaper. He was on, I guess I should say newspaper to The Athletic. Pardon me. Let's get this right. Sorry, guys.
Do you need some help? We can help you with this.
Yeah,
newspaper.
He was on
radio.
Yes, I know what a newspaper is. He went from Ian was on TSN 1200 for a long time, and then now he's writing for The Athletic, which is not a newspaper, but you guys know what I meant. He was on TV prior to being on radio, but this is an important game for the Jets because of the way the Senators have been a playoff team. If we're basing it on the second half of the season, the Senators would be in a playoff spot, right, guys? So, the Jets are going to have to come with a very honest, hardworking effort. And hopefully some of the guys that have been struggling to score, we talked about that with Mike McIntyre. So, the Pierre-Luc Dubois, the Kyle Connors, Mason Appleton, hopefully you see, most of these guys getting on the score sheet tonight.
And one of the things, Drew, one of the things we talked about was, and we're seeing it from the tweets from the Paul Maurice interview, is the fact that Ville Heinola will get a shot on the power play unit. I don't want to say which analyst on the show mentioned that would be a good opportunity for the Jets, but he's the one wearing the Dodgers hat.
That was you, Dave.
Oh yes, there we go.
You should want to take credit for that.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I did actually mention Desi. I was going to take credit for it, but the point is that it's a good opportunity, right? It's a good opportunity for a guy who's got a ton of talent to see what he can do, quarterbacking a power play. So I think this is what we've been talking about for this Jets club is it's not exhibition hockey. You're not just throwing 7 guys in the lineup and saying, let's see what they can all do. And remember, folks have to realize, the Jets have a taxi squad, but the Moose are in Toronto. The Moose are playing in about, 3 hours in Toronto. So all those guys who are playing, Perfetti, Gustafsson, all those defensemen, Sandberg, who scored his first pro goal, we should mention that in the first game of this road trip. Those guys aren't available for the Winnipeg Jets to call up and play. They're going to be on the road with the Manitoba Moose, which road trip doesn't end until next week. So the fact is the Jets season will be done before the Moose season is done, and you're not going to have, unless the Jets, privately fly a guy back, but why they would do that if they were going to do it, that you'd think they would have already planned for it. And again, there's a ton of value for Dylan Sandberg to be playing for the Manitoba Moose, for Cole Perfetti to be playing for the Manitoba Moose. I'm a broken record on this, but it's just my feeling, right? Again, Johnny Kovacevic, 6'5", 220 pound defenseman, but he's a guy who's excited right now, getting power play time, playing 38 minutes in one game earlier this season for the Manitoba Moose. You don't want these guys playing for the Winnipeg Jets. Dylan Sandberg scoring his first pro goal. You want that to be happening with the Manitoba Moose. I know people don't, but it's the fact. That's what you want. That's what you want these guys to do. And if you can, you might get them in the playoffs. But realistically, you want those guys on the Moose. Got David Gustafsson as well, although he's a guy who I probably think could play in the NHL. But he's a guy who is better off playing on the top unit for the Manitoba Moose. So again, you're not getting help from the Moose when it comes to the Jets lineup. But again, you have guys who are currently with the Jets. Like I said, Ville Heinola. Ville Heinola isn't the panacea that's going to save this Jets team. He's not going to be the, but I think what he can provide you is a very viable option, and you're getting a chance to see him in with, by the way, remember, a second power play unit that's had more success than the first power play unit, right?
Certainly,
at least,
yeah. In terms of proportion of time on ice, they've done more with their time on ice than the first unit has. You're right about that.
Yeah, and I just think like it's an opportunity for Ville Heinola to show what we saw when he was playing with the Manitoba Moose. I jokingly said on a power play once when I was watching, and again, like I don't know how many people actually watch Moose games, but the reality is he looked like a guy who had eyes in the side of his head, because that's the way his vision works. Like he really is, like he has an excellent hockey sense. So I think he'll be able to thrive with the man advantage for the Winnipeg Jets. There was a question.
It's bonus time, Dave, right?
100%.
It's absolute bonus time, right? Like he's obviously going to play tonight, but he just gets more minutes so if you think about it, Neil Pionk was the perfect player for him to replace. As we mentioned, obviously, you don't like that Pionk is missing a game, and we hope that it's only one game that he misses, but that's for me just like the game within the game, right? And we know that the power play has been good for the majority of the season. But, going back to that homestand, guys, and earlier on in the road trip, the power play was struggling, right? Like you go back to the game against the Senators. How many power plays did they have, Drew? I think it was 6. It was 6 or 7. And that was one of the main reasons why they didn't win that game against the Senators. So you have to think that, the Jets are wanting to, score at least one, maybe a couple goals on the power play tonight, to make up for how bad that power play was against the Senators, because they really didn't have that many good looks. You miss Ehlers, there's no doubt, but there's enough talented players on both the first power play unit and the second power play unit to get results. This is still a top 5 power play in the league, in my opinion. So, and obviously the numbers, bear that out. So, it's going to be great to see Heinola on that power play. And Dave is absolutely right. He has so much talent. And then, you wonder if, when the playoffs come around, he's a guy that, maybe they keep on the power play. I mean, it's obviously Maurice and Pionk who are the usual defensemen, but just having that option for Maurice is a good thing.
Well, let me ask you guys this, because this, and this is sort of piggybacking on what our buddies Rennie and Kenny and Rennie were talking about yesterday.
What about Kenny and Spenny?
Yeah, Kenny and Spenny too. They were talking about this, and it was posted on illegalcurve.com. What does Heinola have to sort of prove or do over the next 4 games, in order to assure himself of a spot on the Jets' top 6 of the defense for playoff time? Is that a pipe dream, or is that, does he have to do something, tonight and then Monday, Tuesday, and then next Friday to sort of affirm himself as one of the top 3 left side defensemen for the Jets? I believe he should be there. You guys believe he should be there. Most of the people believe he should be there, but the man who makes that decision, Paul Maurice, certainly has not given any indication that he firmly believes that. So what does Heinola need to do starting tonight to affirm his spot for the playoffs?
Yeah, and Weber had a really good. We should also mention it's not Weber's birthday tomorrow. I looked it up, and I remember I wished Weber. I think his birthday's in March.
I think it's an ongoing. My understanding is it's an ongoing joke that it's every day is Weber's birthday.
I thought that was the Rick Ralph joke back in the TSN 1290 days, but regardless, it isn't. So I'm going to take back my happy birthday, because you don't wish someone a happy birthday when it's not their birthday. Just kidding. I mean, let's have fun with that joke. But
the real rule is you don't ask somebody when they're expecting, unless you're sure they're pregnant. But your analogy also works as well there, Ezzy.
Yeah, which is weird, because I was walking down the street yesterday and somebody asked me if I was pregnant, but it's physically impossible.
I may have made that mistake back in the Earls' main days. I'm not going to lie.
That was awkward, probably.
Yeah, and you never asked a woman their age either.
I didn't ask the person specifically. I asked someone else about the person, and they said, "You're terrible." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know."
Well, they're a good judge of character. You aren't terrible.
Well, that's true.
Go ahead, Ezzy. What were you saying?
Cool story, Dave. But let's get back to the defense and Ville Heinola here. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Paul Maurice is going to be maybe watching Heinola a little bit closer than other players. But I think you just want to see an overall consistent game. And Dave has watched Heinola much more than anybody else in the city, with maybe the exception of Pascal. But he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Like, he's very mature for his age, and that's one of the reasons why I think, he's being given this opportunity. You haven't seen a lot of 20-year-old defensemen, right, guys, be given this much opportunity, like playing on the second power play unit. So I think, he's going to have to continue to play like he did in the last game of the road trip against Calgary, right? Like he looked really good moving the puck, and that's ultimately why I think he should be in the lineup in the playoffs, is quite simply because of his skill level. And his skill level, I think, is quite higher, than specifically Jordy Ben. And, you wonder, guys, if the Jets defense is completely healthy, obviously minus Nathan Beaulieu, like who is going to be, the defenseman on the left side that is the odd man out, right? Like, is it going to be Derek Forbort? I think that's something that, needs to be discussed. I think it's really between Ville Heinola, Logan Stanley, and Derek Forbort. And you'd probably give Forbort, the upper hand just because he's played the majority of games paired up with Neil Pionk. But I think, put it this way, Drew, if Ville Heinola continues to play the way he has in the last 4 games of the season, I think you strongly have to look at, putting Heinola in over either Forbort or Stanley on that left side.
I think it makes sense there. Ezzy, Dave, what do you need to see from Heinola? I mean, what is, pretend you're Paul Maurice. I mean, this is a guy, despite what he might say about having played 10 rookies, back in his Carolina days, it's been a long time since then. And, you have to go with what he's done most recently. And that clearly is that he hasn't trusted the rookies. So if you're Paul Maurice, what do you need to see to get him to change his mind?
Well, I mean, again, I think you see the things that he does so well. I think that those short passes, getting the puck out of the Jets zone entries. I mean, he's keep playing clean. I mean, he was asked about body position and how does he, as a smaller guy, handle these big boys who are coming in on him. And he just says he understands the kind of player he is and play within the structure of his game. But I think if you give him that opportunity, his skating ability is such, and his offensive ability and his, the sense that he has is going to go a long way for this Jets team. And I think he brings an element that they don't have a ton of, right? I mean, again, we're looking at, who are you looking at? Derek Forbort. Derek Forbort is what Derek Forbort is, which again, in my mind, is a third pairing defenseman, when he's healthy. And I don't know that he's that healthy because, there were a couple instances where he looked very slow the last few games. So to me, Derek Forbort is a guy who should probably be your third pairing defenseman. That's not a knock on him. That's just where he is. This is a guy who played, how many games did he play last year? 8, 10, 15, whatever it was.
Before the bubble, he didn't play in very many.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, he dealt with a lot of injuries. He's been healthy this year. That's a good thing because he's been good. But again, part of that was playing with Neil Pionk. So I'm of the opinion that Ville Heinola is a player who has the experience. Again, he's not that far removed from playing in the World Juniors, but he's also a guy who's played in the Finnish League with men. He played in the American Hockey League with men, and he can handle himself at the NHL level. So, you want a guy like, look, we saw it with Dylan DeMello. You want a guy who's going to be quiet. He's not going to make waves. He's going to get that pass out because we've seen so much trouble with the Jets in terms of their passing and getting the play up the ice. So many passes have been in the skates behind guys, and it just throws up all the momentum on this Jets team. They can't attack because they're reaching backwards. And because they're reaching backwards, their momentum ends and they're stuck in the neutral zone and they don't get anything going. So if you have a guy who can make a crisp pass, if you have a guy who can lug the puck up the ice, get it into that zone when he's on the power play, it's going to go a world for this Jets team, I think. And again, like I said, I'm not throwing this all on Ville Heinola and saying he's going to be the savior of this Jets franchise, but I don't think he's going to hurt them. And I think if you give him the opportunity, again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but you know what Jordy Ben is. And you know what Derek Forbort is. So let Logan Stanley, let Ville Heinola, play out the string of games. And obviously out of necessity, when you lose Neil Pionk, you need a guy who's going to be able to play on that right side. Logan Stanley's done that a little bit, but for the most part, he's a left side guy. But again, I think you have to allow these guys that opportunity, because if you don't, Troy asked me about Dylan Samberg. Troy Stevens in the chat asked me if I thought Dylan Samberg should be a guy that should have gotten, into games. I'm of the opinion, and I talked to people who watched him in college because I can't pretend like I did.
There's the comment that's on your screen now.
Yeah, well, there's been a few, but anyways, the point is that that should a guy like Dylan Samberg be afforded the opportunity to have learned in the NHL? The NHL is not a developmental league. The NHL is not a league for guys who are still developing their game. Dylan Samberg, again, I've watched the guy play every single game he's played in the pro ranks this season. think this guy has a ton of upside. I think he's going to be a very good Winnipeg Jet for years to come. But the NHL is not a place for Dylan Sandberg to learn his craft. The AHL is. And when he makes a mistake, I mean, there was a pinch along the wall that led to a goal against the Moose because it put Johnny Kovacevic on a 2-on-1, defending a 2-on-1 because of the pinch that Sandberg made. Now, I'm not going to take him to task for it because it's a learning moment for the kid. Pascal Vincent throws him out the next shift. Paul Maurice can't do that. So that's what people have to understand, is that the NHL is not a place you want these young guys, especially defensemen. A forward, I'm less inclined to worry about, but a defenseman it's not a place for these guys to learn. So you go and you play. Johnny Kovacevic, second-year pro, is playing 38 minutes in a game. You're not doing that in the NHL. So I'm just saying,
put the context around that, because the Moose only had 5 defensemen that game for whatever reasons.
And one of whom was a forward playing in his third AHL game.
Right.
All I'm saying is
converted forward. Yeah.
Right. I'm just saying that the guy like Ville Heinola is experienced enough that you can throw him in and you'll feel confident that he knows what to do. That's all I'm going to say.
Fair enough. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It's Saturday morning. We're live here on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. This segment brought to you by our friends at Boston Pizza. Boston Pizza has the perfect starting lineup tonight. With the BP Game Day Meal Deal, choose 2 of your favorite gourmet pizzas, along with a triple order of Boston Pizza's famous wings, plus 2 dipping sauces, all for $54.99. It serves 5 to 6 people. Available for takeout and delivery only at bostonpizza.com, or download the MyBP app. Saturday morning, as I mentioned, it is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. A reminder that later on tonight, after the Moose game, after the Jets and the Senators game, getting a little ahead of myself, the Moose at 2:00 this afternoon, but after the Jets and the Senators tonight, back here on our YouTube channel, it's going to be the Illegal Curve post-game show. Join myself, Dave, and Ezzy as we break down everything that happened between the Jets and the Senators in tonight's final Saturday night of the regular season for the Jets. Of course, playoff time still to come. Don't know the playoff schedule. Won't know it probably for another week or 10 days or so, but time will tell on that front. And we are pleased now to welcome to the program our good friend from TSN in Toronto. You know him as one of the key members of Overdrive on TSN Radio. Our buddy Jeff O'Neill joins us on the program. Jeff, good morning. Nice to see you, buddy. Good. How are you?
Good to see you guys. Yeah, just living the dream here in Ontario. I don't know what you guys are doing, but we can't leave our house yet. So
that's why
what we're dealt with.
Yeah, we got our lockdown rules yesterday as well. I don't know if they're quite as stringent as they are in Ontario. We can still golf here, so I'm not quite sure what the logic behind that is in Ontario. But I guess that's for a separate show at a different point in time, right there, Jeff?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like, it's just, we got to get through this, and we all know that. But to be the only place in the world you can't golf, I just find that a little bit goofy.
It certainly isn't. There's not a lot of logic behind it as far as I'm concerned. Jeff obviously brought you on, talk about the Winnipeg Jets, talk about the North Division. You know, a lot of the talk earlier this week had to do with Jets head coach Paul Maurice. And you know Paul Maurice as a player, as well as almost anybody that's played for him. And the question was asked, you know, is he stubborn? Is he a stubborn head coach? From your experience being around the game for so many years, is Paul Maurice, would you consider him stubborn, or, you know, maybe just as stubborn as a lot of other head coaches that you've encountered?
I think anybody in the coaching industry is stubborn, and I actually don't blame them for it. I think you have to have some things set in place. Obviously, there's area where there's got to be give and take. But when you're dealing with probably 30 personalities as far as the players go, and everybody chimes in, and everybody's got an ego, and everybody's got an agent, and everybody's got a dad that thinks their kid's the best, sometimes when you're the guy in charge, and I mean, Daryl Sutter is a great example of it as well. Do you think Daryl Sutter is stubborn? I would say so, yes. But he runs the show, and he's not just having everybody's ego and everybody involved. And so I think that's part of the gig, where it's like you almost got to be stubborn. I think Paul's grown a lot as a coach over the years since when I had him in Carolina. But I think being stubborn as a head coach, I mean, I don't know what the context of the conversation was with Paul, if it had anything to do with Scheifele or Hellebuyck or whatever. Those were just personal decisions. I don't think that's stubbornness.
It had to do with playing young players, playing rookies. And I think he sort of countered that by saying that when he had his most success in Carolina, he played 9 or 10 rookies that year. So he was, I think many people here in Winnipeg wanted to see rookie defenseman Ville Heinola a lot quicker than they have. And that's where the conversation sort of got its origins from.
Well, I don't know. What I've learned from pro sports is sometimes there's messages sent throughout organizations, throughout media, throughout all the different chains that nobody has no idea about. For instance, if your G, and I'm not saying this is the case in Winnipeg, if your GM doesn't get you anybody at the deadline, you start playing guys that aren't capable to show them, send a message up to the GM saying, well, you're not going to get me anybody. This is what I got. So they're going to be thrown out there. If the coach doesn't like the roster that's available at training camp, they'll all of a sudden just start playing guys that they want or they like, whether the GM likes it or not. So those messages, that's a part of all the decision-making where somebody's happy, somebody's not happy. I mean, that happens throughout all sports, especially in hockey.
Oh, Doug, there's obviously a lot of talk, here in Winnipeg about, whether the Jets match up better against Toronto or Edmonton, because obviously, the Jets Habs series isn't going to happen. And I imagine, in Ontario, there's a lot of fans that are, dying to see the Leafs and Habs match up in the first round. But when you look at this Jets team, and I know you watch the Leafs more, but you've watched the Jets as well, covering it for TSN and TSN 1050. Like, is there a team that you think the Jets match up more against? Because the Jets have had a lot of trouble with Connor McDavid and the Oilers this year, losing 7 times. But having said that, they've also had a lot of trouble shutting down Austin Matthews, John Tavares, and Mitch Marner as well.
I think what the Jets' number one goal is to get everyone healthy and try to get as dialed in as possible before the playoffs. Because if Hellebuyck's cooking and everyone's dialed in, and I don't love their decor. I'll be flat out honest with that. I don't think that's a secret, my opinion. I thought Chevy should have done something more at the deadline to help that decor. But if that roster is all going and they've got the depth and their star players are playing well, they shouldn't even be thinking about Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews. If they're playing well, they should be making the other team adjust to them and worry about them. Because when Hellebuyck's going good and they show that depth up front, everybody talked about that top 9 they have is the best in the league, or if not up there. So for their situation, they got to get dialed in and get cooking right before the playoffs. And then Edmonton's got to say, okay, yeah, we got McDavid and Draisaitl, but how the hell are we going to compete with them after they go off the ice? That's the mission, because there's no way in hell that Edmonton can compete with that team when those 2 star players leave the ice. The players are just better. Adam Lowry, Stastny, those guys, those depth players, or after the Scheifele line, they should be eating up the Edmonton Oilers. So I don't think they should fear anything. Obviously, when you're looking at McDavid, what he's doing right now, it's almost like he could single-handedly win a series, as goofy as that sounds. He's getting 3 points a night. Will that happen in the playoffs? I don't know. But him and Draisaitl would scare the heck out of me, yeah. But the Winnipeg Jets got to flip the script here and say, okay, that's great. You're unbelievable. Respect you and everything. But when you go off the ice, we're going to crush your team. And if it's same for Toronto, if they're playing Toronto, that should be the goal for them. I think anyway, that's where their strength is.
Saturday morning, you're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all our social media platforms. Our guest from TSN in Toronto, TSN 1050 Overdrive, our good friend Jeff O'Neill joins us on the show.
The Jets just finished a 7-game losing streak. They finally won. They beat the Flames. They've got 4 games left. You have 11 plus seasons in the NHL. How important was it for you as a player? Like you said, you got to get all those guys cooking. How important is it that the team is vibing just before the playoffs in order to have that sort of success in that first round and then continued on?
Yeah, they just got out of that losing streak. And I don't know if it's kind of a pessimistic thought process, but I kind of like a team that goes through some growing pains or a struggle right about the time the Jets did. because hopefully they get out of it and it's in the rearview mirror. Because no matter if it's a 56 game season or 82 game season, there's always a time where everybody's going to have their arms up in the air saying, oh my God, our team sucks. The players think the team sucks. The coach does, the GM does. And the Winnipeg Jets had that streak not too long ago, but they're out of it, hopefully. And if they just need to get healthy and get into the playoffs, and hopefully they start peaking at the right time and carry right through the playoffs. I think the players' goal, and it's very difficult, obviously, you can't have everybody playing well at the same time. But the guys that really matter, the core guys, the center iceman, the goaltender, the defenseman, you get everybody cooking at the same time, that's a dangerous team, man, and they should scare people a lot.
You know, from sort of piggybacking on that, Jeff, you know, being in Toronto, you obviously cover the Leafs closer. You know, do the Jets scare you at a different level than, say, a Montreal Canadiens team that's fully healthy? I mean, that's the caveat, of course, with both the Jets and the Habs right now, the Habs especially, riddled with injuries. Come playoff time, you know, if Montreal's healthy, given that they might be seeing, you know, a week between the end of the regular season and the start of the playoffs, how much fear does a Montreal Canadiens team strike into the heart of the Leafs or the Leafs fans?
Right now, after what I watched the other night, it's 0. And the only way they would start striking fear into people is if Carey Price got healthy. They have a difficult time scoring, and it just seems like there's just a negative cloud around that team. I don't know what it is. They've been through it this year, and it seems like one thing after the other. Coach gets fired. They can't score goals. They can't keep it out of the net. They can't score a power play goal. They can't score I don't know. It just seems like Cole Caulfield's been a shot in the arm. But if I'm an NHL team going through tape right now with the Montreal Canadiens, I'm not scared of that whatsoever. The idea of Shea Weber coming back, yeah, he's a big, strong guy, but Carey Price would be the one guy, and he has to get in, number one, and return to form, like vintage Carey Price form. Because I don't know if you've been watching the last couple of years. He lets in a lot of goals right now, or he has been. Mm-hmm. So those are big ifs for them to scare anybody, because right now I don't think they scare anybody.
You talk about a cloud sort of over the organization, and I mean, Marc Bergevin in Montreal has gone through coaches, you know, basically on schedule every 2 or 3 years. It's time for a new coaching change. How much does that sort of permeate the dressing room? You know, always constantly having to churn through coaches, not letting a coach like Claude Julien maybe work through it a little bit more. I mean, we see here in Winnipeg, Paul Maurice has been around now. I believe this is year 8. The Jets have had 2 coaches in total since they came back from Atlanta, you know, versus the constant churn that you're seeing in Montreal, that you're seeing in Calgary, certainly as well. You know, how much does that impact the dressing room itself?
I think when you're in the best league in the world, it's just so difficult to perform. You're almost so, as a player, I think you're so tunnel vision. You just have to go, you're going to work and you're just thinking about your own game and working hard. Like, let's be honest, guys, like hockey is not rocket scientist. Like, it's not rocket science. The coach comes in, maybe he could change a system a little bit. You might have to alter a little bit of your routes on the ice, but if you can't pick that up and figure that out at that level, there's something wrong. So it's a different voice, and obviously different players have to adjust, because the new guy might not like you as much as the other guy. He might like you more. He might give you more of an opportunity. So you're going to, whatever. There's that to adjust to, but I'm always baffled by, the players are adjusting to the system or whatever. I mean, I always thought an NHL player could get a message from a coach on the bench. Okay, guys, we're up by 2 goals with 7 minutes left. Go into a defensive style. Okay, that's not that hard. And what, these guys take 6 months to adjust to a system? I've never really understood that. It's, you know.
Are you possibly saying, Jeff, that those of us in the media are maybe a little bit full of it?
I'm in the media now, so I can't say that.
Fair enough.
You know, Odog, just switch, you know, keeping with goaltending story, you know, you mentioned Carey Price, and I agree with you 100%. Having a healthy Carey Price would obviously help the Habs big time against the Leafs or, you know, the Oilers. But, you know, when you talk about in Toronto, obviously, you know, some Jets fans, in the chat might not like that we're switching to the Leafs, but you cover the Leafs and I don't really care because they are the best team in the North Division, at least in the regular season. But, Freddie Andersen, obviously, he didn't have a very good showing against the Moose, and the expectation is that he's going to be taken off long-term injured reserve next week. And I think you'd agree that right now, it's Jack Campbell's net and, Freddie Andersen is the backup. But how much of a concern do you think the goaltending is going into the playoffs? Or again, is that a media creation? Because I imagine you guys have talked about it quite a bit on Overdrive. Campbell's obviously had a storybook season, but what's kind of your level of confidence in the Leafs goaltending right now?
I think there's confidence just because of Jack Campbell's record. Everyone keeps referencing, and I do it myself, and it's hard not to do just because of what the situation is. And the situation is he's been a career backup goaltender. So you're kind of weighing the two things or the two elements. And one is his record right now, which I believe is 16-2-2, which I don't care what league you're in or what level. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
It's pretty damn good. But people always have it in the back of their head, and it's difficult not to do. And I do the same, where it's like, is this guy turning into a pumpkin sometime soon? And is it going to be in the playoffs? Is it going to cost the Leafs? And the other side of it is Freddie Andersen. He's got to play a couple games in the big league level to get ready. This is like his training camp. You can't go down and play the Moose for 25 minutes or whatever the hell he did and be ready to play in the NHL. I'd rather him practice with the big team. But if he's going to be a part of the equation, which my hopes are that he is, because I think if the Leafs do go on a run, it would be a Chicago situation or a Pittsburgh situation where Darling had to help out Corey Crawford, and Marc-Andre Fleury and Matt Murray did it together. I don't know if one of these guys can get the job done itself, either through play or health or whatever it is. And another thing, guys, just to follow up on the topic, it's been a weird – I got a bit of a sour taste in my mouth for goalies this year, man. I've just seen so many times where goalies are playing terrible, and it's awfully difficult, and you cannot do it in the NHL is question injuries or whatever. But I've seen so many goalies getting destroyed in the net, and all of a sudden, gotta go. Something's wrong. Like, I always wonder, it's like if they were getting a shutout, would they be just racing out of the net like they do? It's just been a crazy year, and I just find that goalies, I don't know, and I'm not going to name in any individually, but it's like when it hits the fan, it's like, well, just, and I know for a fact that some organizations have had very difficult time finding out what the hell's wrong with some of these guys. So thumbs down to goalies right now.
Jeff O'Neill is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. You know Jeff, of course, with his work with TSN in Toronto, TSN 1050 Overdrive, Monday to Friday. You can tune into that great show as well.
You know, Jeff, you mentioned tunnel vision, and I feel like everybody in Canada this year has had tunnel vision, because if you ask me what's happening in the rest of the league, I would have absolutely no idea.
No, it's like the KHL.
Yeah, honestly, I use that analogy. We were having someone on from Minnesota, and I said it may as well be the KHL right now, because I have absolutely no idea what is happening with the other divisions. But how do you think that's going to factor in, whether it's Toronto or Winnipeg or Montreal or Edmonton that comes out of this North Division? How do you think these teams will fare against these teams that, like, it's the old baseball mentality of the American League versus National League, where you didn't play each other. You don't really know what you're going to face, right?
I kind of get a sense that there's going to be an ass beating one way or the other. Like, one team's going to be like, oh, okay, maybe we're not that good, or man, we're way better than Tampa or Florida or Pittsburgh or something like that. I just think the unfamiliarity is going to be a shock, where you thought you were trucking along pretty good, but then the other guys are just better. And I'm a dreamer, man. I just think of weird stuff. I think the semifinals could be like sweeps, just because it's just a shock and another team's way better. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And just the fact that I don't know about you guys, this North Division's been great and everything for Canada and, where I work and where everybody works, but I could care less to watch Winnipeg, Calgary, Toronto. I've had enough. I'm ready for the playoffs and to get out of the North Division. Even when I watch, like, you're tuning into other games, it's like, If I see Pittsburgh play New Jersey one more time, I quit. I give up. Or Buffalo, Philly. I'm like, I can't keep watching this. It's like Groundhog Day. It's just the same thing over. And there's such good players. I love watching hockey, but man, I was like, oh my God, these guys again.
So you're not going to tune in for those final 3 games between the Canucks and the Flames after the rest of the North Division schedule is all complete, and they're making them play those 3 meaningless games for some reason?
I will. I'll end up doing it just because I kind of have to, and I kind of addicted to it. And I just tuned in. I'm like, okay, I'll try to pull something out of this that's meaningless, but it generally probably won't happen.
Jeff, we'll let you go on this last question. I mean, the big talk of the week was, of course, Tom Wilson and the Rangers and all that. I'll use the word fiasco. I don't necessarily know if that's your word. I guess sort of, what were your thoughts about all that? Did the player safety get it wrong? Did they get it right? Did Wilson step over a line? Sort of just, your quick sort of summary of what you felt about that.
I think Tom Wilson, for everybody that was outraged and think it was the end of the world and it's a goon league, he got fined. The New York Rangers dealt with it, and they were big boys about it. They weren't calling their parents saying, I just don't want to go out there and play in this league. I'm scared, or I hate it, or whatever. And it's over with. You won't see it for 5 more years. And, for everyone that thinks it's a goon league, it's a high skill league. It's not the Quebec Pee Wee tournament. Like, guys handle stuff differently than an office space or a different OHL league or whatever. It's big boy stuff. And for the last time I checked, everyone in the sporting world, not just hockey, was tuning into the Caps Rangers, where they might not have before that. And it's kind of weird because the puck drops and there's 6 fights, and I'm thinking, wow, this is kind of a tough look for the hockey. But people are watching it, and they'll decide afterwards if they like that or not. So I just think it was dealt with. It was obviously explosive stuff. I mean, we had stuff to talk about for 4 days about the Rangers and Caps, and we never talk about them at all. But we'll move on, and it's over with. And there was a spotlight on the NHL for 3 or 4 days, and that's it. I mean, you won't see that again for a long time. That's for sure.
Jeff O'Neill is with TSN 1050 in Toronto. Overdrive, you can tune into that Monday through Friday. O-Dog, always appreciate it. Nice to see you, buddy. Keep your chin up. I know it's getting difficult there, but you got our thoughts, and sending you some good vibes over there. We'll get back onto the golf course soon enough, bud.
Okay, thanks, guys. Thanks, Ezra, for the note, bud. See you.
Take care, Jeff. There he goes. Jeff O'Neill, O-Dog, joining us here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Saturday morning, we are live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. Some final thoughts from you guys before we wrap it up for this Saturday morning. The Jets and the Senators later on tonight, of course. Post-game show, the Illegal Curve post-game show. Going to be a busy Saturday night around 8:30, 8:40. And then again, back at it Monday and Tuesday with the Canucks and the Jets. The post-game shows those nights as well. Just some final thoughts ahead of tonight's game between the Jets and the Senators.
Yeah, well, firstly, a great interview with O-Dog, and, we always love having him on, and it's crazy. I know Dave probably thinks this as well, doing the double coverage with the Moose and Jets. It's crazy that, there's only 4 games left in the season, right? Like, how did that fly by so quickly? But, I'm looking forward to this game. I think it's going to be, a much more exciting game than maybe we thought it was going to be, a month ago when you looked at the schedule and you saw this Ottawa game, even though I think this might have been the game that was rescheduled, if I'm not mistaken. Was this the one that was rescheduled?
Yeah, well, yes, this is the game that was added when you go back. Yeah, they were supposed to play 2 in a row against Ottawa, and then they didn't end up doing so. Right. So this is right. Yeah, I couldn't for sure tell you when this game was originally scheduled for. I think it was supposed to be played yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, and then it got moved. Or it was supposed to be played on a Friday, and then it got moved to obviously tonight. So
yeah. And the only reason why I brought that up, Drew, is because, I don't think a lot of people were circling the Jets and Senators, in early May. But the point is, like, we talked about it. This Senators team, I like watching this team. And I think you guys, would agree with that they're an exciting team to watch, with all of that talent, Dave, that's, come up through the American Hockey League, right? With the guys like Batherson and Formenton, and obviously, Brady Tkachuk is we all know he's the leader of this team now, right? He's so young, but he's the one that drives it, and hopefully the Jets are able to shut down Connor Brown, who's done some damage against them, on the penalty kill. But it's a big test here, and all eyes have to be on Heinola. And, Dave predicted it. And, we got the confirmation that Heinola is going to be able to, get some power play time on that second unit. So, it's going to be very interesting to see how he does with that. Maybe he'll put up some points, and just, how the Jets are going to follow up, breaking the losing streak against Calgary, with another honest, hardworking effort against the team that, has already defeated them within the last week. So, Connor Hellebuyck's going to get a great opportunity to continue his strong play with the shutout that he got a couple of, 3 nights ago on Wednesday, but also just, the Jets have to find, more consistency in the scoring department from, the players that have been struggling. And we don't have to, go over it, but, the main ones are Dubois and Connor, that, you hope that they're able to put some pucks behind whoever's in net for Ottawa. It's probably going to be Gustafsson.
Before we let Dave have the final word this morning, a quick update from the World Curling Championships. Carrie Einerson and her team from Gimli, Manitoba, after struggling to start the tournament, qualified for the playoffs, which was a terrific accomplishment given where they were at a point in time, which means Canada will qualify for the Olympics, which is also equally important. At the fifth end break against Sweden, needing to win to move on to the semifinals. Canada trailing 5-2 to Sweden. So hopefully a better second half of the game for Carrie Einerson, her team from Gimli, to keep the good vibes going into the semifinals at the World Curling Championship.
They just have to score 4 in the next end, Drew. Just get 4, and you're going to be right back in it.
Just get an 8-ender, and you got the game in control. Dave, your final thoughts for tonight. Give a plug, of course, to your Moose coverage, because I know you will anyways.
Well, I'm not going to give any insight, any curling analysis, considering the only time I've ever curled was in West St. Paul at their curling rink, and I got asked to leave after I dropped the rock on the ice. So it was a very short curling first ever outing for me. Let's just put it that way. So curling is not a sport I even understand or pretend.
Was that in high school, Dave?
My uncle. Yeah, I was in high school. My uncle's actually a pretty good curler. I think he curls in the Doctors League. He's pretty good. He's won some championships out in Edmonton before, but I don't have any of his curling aptitude. Yeah, but no, I mean, it's going to be a busy day. There's no question about it. This is a Moose team that has now gone 8-0-0-1 or 8-0-0-1 to be more accurate, and they've just been firing on all cylinders. Had a really good game against the Toronto Marlies team that tied the game up in like 36 seconds in the second period, the last game, to make it a 3-3 game. Then Nelson Nogier scored his first goal of the year. Turned out to be the game winner about 45 seconds after the Marlies had tied it. And then Cole Keller, the Manitoban, ended up getting the win, his second win in relief, because Mikkel Burden got the hook. So you're expecting a bounce-back game from Mikkel Burden. And this is a Moose team that, again, like I said, they don't quit. There's so many good stories. Dylan Sandberg, like I said, his first pro goal. Ty Pelton-Bice, he's a guy the Jets signed, played with Cole Caulfield in Wisconsin. He scored his first pro goal. Lots of good things to like from the Manitoba Moose. Jeff Malott scored his 13th. Actually, sadly, 0, David. I had 0 drinks before I dropped that rock. Jeff Malott scored his 13th.
Just not that strong, apparently.
No, I was horsing around. I was being an idiot. So 13th goal for Jeff Malott. He ties the AHL rookie scoring lead. He's been a really good story out of Cornell. So there's a lot to like from the Manitoba Moose. They get going at 2 o'clock. You can watch that game. I think it might be on TSN2. I'm not sure. I know the last one was on TSN2. If not, Daniel Fink will have the call on CGOB. You can listen to him. So that's a lot to look forward to. And then, of course, the Winnipeg Jets will go, and we're going to have full coverage on that on the website. We'll have the media availability from this morning on illegalcurve.com. You can look at that in the pregame report. And then, of course, the post-game report also will be up on illegalcurve.com. We'll be doing the post-game. So, lots to look forward to. And more importantly, let's get some likes. Before you go get your Saturday started, before you turn on the Moose game, drop some likes in the video. Hit that like. As Mike Sevy said, hit the subscribe button and ring that bell.
No,
there you have it. Smash the bell, ring, give us some likes, everything along those lines. Reminder, tonight's post-game show right around 8:35, 8:40, give or take a couple minutes there. I assume the 3 of us will all be back later tonight to talk about the Jets and the Senators. Want to give a big thank you to everybody who joined us on the program this morning. Mike McIntyre, Ian Mendes, and of course, Jeff O'Neill. Big thanks to them for joining us. Want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Bernstein's Deli, Zappia Group Realty, and Boston Pizza. Support these fine local businesses because they support Illegal Curve Hockey. Support any other local businesses right now because they certainly need your assistance as we're into lockdown number 3, unfortunately. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg.
Hold on.
Okay. What?
There's one thing that we forgot.
What's that?
Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And unfortunately, you guys know my mom passed away when I was very, very young, but it's still a special day for me. I always, take, some time to remember her. But it's a very important day because there aren't enough words for how important moms are in everybody's life. So we got to get that in there. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms.
Well said, Ezzy. I was remiss certainly in missing that, but thank you for catching me there before I would get in trouble, certainly with my mom and my wife and everybody and everything along those lines. On that note, salute to the mothers. We'll see everybody back here around 8:35, 8:40 later on tonight for the post-game show. All your latest Winnipeg Jets and Manitoba Moose news and audio is available on illegalcurve.com. It's also on our YouTube page, so subscribe there. Don't miss a minute. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.